Oh, okay, okay. Then let me try once again and see. I go. Aha. Aha. Ma ba mi anya. That's fine. That's fine. Doc, the closer the best. Yes. Don't mind me, Doc. Doc, before you came, people were saying that the only time they hear of you is when you are coming to fight for the tax issues. Don't mind them. I won't allow them to bully you. A very good morning to all of you. My name is Jeffrey Kabute Okansi Jr. I am actually the Executive Director for RMA. Kind Kesty, some support from International Budget Partnership. We're here this morning. We've convened to discuss tax equity. If I went to my Ghana language, they will tell you, "Akebeke ebatos and ajani nofiano efe pepepe." And then when you go to the tree, they'll say, "Bibia efa etuo no hono." They say, "Emunda opefe." It didn't say so nature. Etuo hon say bia no. Yen na obia ehon entono na wanta obia ama. Doc mitiano wa boa me kakra o. So we welcome all of you to this convening, and like you all know, this is what we at RMA we do. We look at tax issues and how fair, how progressive tax issues are. And so this morning, if we called on you, myself, our partners, and we're looking at having this convening to discuss the issues that most of you already know. We have representatives from CSO, media, academia. We also have industry. Here present, we also have government reps. The administrators themselves are also here. So it's going to be an open discussion, and I'm welcoming all of you to this discussion. The only ground rule that would exist is we should all allow and tolerate one another to participate and share their views. And I'm sure we will have divergent views, but they all come to the best of our dialogue. And the outcomes is what we will present as the way forward. So I would actually call Faria to come, and she'll take over as your moderator for the day. Can you please give her a round of applause?
Good morning, everyone. Morning. It is my great pleasure to be here today with you. Ghana is my second home. For those of you who know me, that's very true. Back when there was still 10 regions, I went to all 10 regions. Really, you would say my first really important job was actually working in Ghana on a property tax reform out in Hohoi in Volta region. So I actually didn't come to Accra until I'd been living in Ghana for 1.5 years. So, I felt really like a village girl at that point. And so it's really a sincere pleasure to be back in Ghana now almost 10 years later, to be talking about the issues of tax equity. And, given the current context, I think these issues are more important than ever before. And it's a great honor to have some very important players, that's going to shape this discourse, shape this debate in the room. So in terms of how today will go, so it's not going to be one where we're just going to hear presentations and that's it, maybe some Q&A. This is going to be a working session. So I will be moderating in a way where actually by the end of this afternoon, hopefully, we're going to catch up on time. We will have actually worked on these issues together as a group. You will have noticed there's flip charts on this side of the room. We will be filling them up. We will also have fantastic input, I know, from our panelists. And I really hope today we'll have a rich discussion that will actually, we will leave this room with actions, with commitments. So it's not just to talk shop. And I know it's the one last push before the festive season. So again, I thank you for your presence. So we will, you know, of course, we're going over the welcome. I'll invite my colleague, Dr. Alex Ampabeng, to go over the purpose of this meeting, the overview of the Tax Equity Initiative at the International Budget Partnership. I realized I did not even introduce myself. So, I'm sorry. I just was so excited. So my name is Faria Mohiuddin. I'm the Senior Program Officer, Tax Equity for Global and Regional Work. I am based, while my role is based in Washington, D.C., I myself am based in Berlin, Germany. And you know, a lot of you know Dr. Alex, and so he is now our Senior Program Officer, and so the lead for our program here in Ghana. So we'll go over that. We'll have a short snack break. We'll encourage people to go get their tea and snacks and come back into the room to keep up with time. We will have a presentation on the political economy context. Then we'll get to the work. We'll have some breakout discussions on, you know, what this might mean for you, for the people in this room, followed by our panelists. And then after our panelists, we're going to look at, you know, there'll be panelists, Q&A, and then we'll have a discussion on what are the pragmatic steps towards achieving tax equity. And then we'll wrap up and we'll have closing remarks. And inshallah, we'll be out of here by 2:30. So I hope you'll, yeah, I mean, I'm trying. We'll see. I mean, it's also, you know, dependent on all of you to help make that a reality. Again, it's festive period. As I said to Jeffrey, I don't want to be in a position of going back from Legon to Accra at 4 p.m., please. And I always say when I moderate, the experience will be like Singapore. It'll be enjoyable, luxurious, but quite strict. So I'll be keeping time. And with that, once again, I'd like to welcome you. And then I believe we have, what's happening? With Alex? No. And you'll notice, okay, so you will notice that we have nixed the self-introduction. But when we work in the groups, I will invite all of you to introduce yourselves. I mean, certainly our esteemed panelists, you will be introduced. But I do believe, you know, the majority of the people kind of already know each other. So when we work in the groups, I will encourage you to introduce yourselves and the work that you do. So I believe with that, I'm inviting my colleague, Dr. Alex Ampabeng, to give us an overview of why we're here today and the work that IBP does on tax equity. Thank you. Welcome, Alex.
Danke. Since you came from Germany, I have to give you a German welcome. Right, good morning, and thanks to every one of you for making it. I know it was a very short notice, but your participation is very, very much appreciated. I remember boxing Dr. here. I said, Doc, you have to be here. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll walk you through, I don't know if you can do the projection for me from there. Okay, so I'll walk you through briefly what IVP is and why we are here today. And I think Jeff and Faria have done a bit of justice on the reason we've gathered here today. It's pretty much on promoting tax equity. And I was not surprised that Faria said she was here almost 10 years ago, on property tax reforms. When you finish, ask me where we are, and I'll tell you the answer. And I'm sure even the laughter alone in the room tells you where we are. Tax equity is a key concern for us in IBP and even in Ghana, because how equitable your tax systems are directly impacts on inequality issues, it impacts on the revenue that you generate, and subsequently on how the generated revenue gets spent. So this morning we are looking at deliberating on how do we achieve tax equity in Ghana, how do we change the narrative. There have been a number of instances when taxes in Ghana has become more like an emergency. So government is in power, they need money, quickly they rush to parliament and then see which area presents the best opportunity for tax revenue. Has it not been the case? E-levy on my mind, luxury vehicle levy, and a whole lot of other knee-jerk approaches we've adopted in the past. And not partly because as a country, we don't seem to have, well, no, we don't have a tax strategy. And if you don't have a tax strategy, you are left with firefighting whenever you need revenue. And you don't achieve tax equity when you're firefighting. You achieve equity when enough planning goes into when, how, what kind of conversations. So we hope that by the time we leave here this afternoon, at least we'll be able to make some few commitments, real commitment, not the usual CSO talk and go kind of approach. But then how do we engage? Who do we engage? How? When? In promoting tax equity in Ghana. But before then, let me give you a brief overview of the International Budget Partnership, because maybe somebody today might be the first time you're hearing about IBP. But the International Budget Partnership is a very well-known, strong, and powerful non-governmental organization operating in a number of countries, undertaking a host of activities. We exist to promote responsible, effective, equitable management of public money, of your money, of the very tax conversation that we are here. In doing so, we work with others. So we partner with others, the civil society, those in government, academia, industry players, professional bodies, and that is more the reason most of you are here. That's those who are aware. This is not your usual CSO meetings where you have civil society talking to ourselves. But IBP believes in diverse partnership or groups coming together to influence the narrative. And that's why you have people from industry and other key players around. In doing that together, we work together with you to generate data. And those of you who met with us last week, you said we want to change the narrative around civil society advocacy work. Most of times, some politicians, or not, most of our politicians don't take us serious because to them, you do just the talking. But when our talking is backed by data, when we are presenting facts, then it becomes very difficult for anybody to dispute it. And people tend to have no option than accept or at least recognize the contribution you are making. We also believe that tax knowledge or the skills for tax advocacy or the practical aspect of tax is a bit weaker within Ghana and more specifically in the CSO space. So as part of the things we do, we also build the capacities and support organized groups and civil society on tax to be able to have a voice in national conversations. So this is just an overview on our numbers. So we have about 307 organizations, possibly more. Over 280 are civil society. So that should tell you that we work with groups other than civil societies, organized groups, and especially here we are looking forward to work with the likes of the labor union, the trade unions. So you have GUTA, you have AGI, and more crucially with academia, where we believe that you'll be able to carry out some of the compelling research which will inform the tax work in Ghana. So our tax equity work actually focuses on, as I said earlier, building ties, allies with diverse actors beyond civil society to influence domestic tax reforms so that the revenue that we generate will benefit everybody and not just a few. So in other words, we go beyond just asking people to pay, but also looking at the budget work, we kind of follow our money. Where did our money go to? And I think accountability in the past or even now has been one of the challenges why sometimes people are so reluctant to pay taxes in Ghana. The usual word is okay, so post-COVID, tax equity is so important. And in tax equity from the IBP perspective goes beyond what the fairness in the tax. So rather than only the collection, you also look at the money collected being used for the collective good rather than benefiting the very few. And we believe that post-COVID, tax revenue is low. And this is not only in Ghana, globally, because some companies were pretty much hit. As companies are suffering from losses, corporate taxes and subsequently all other associated revenues to the state are predicted to be lower, as we have been seeing anyway. Going to widen inequality gap. When you're having low revenue, you have to find a way of financing your budget. And that's what's going to lead to skyrocketing in debt. We have a better example in Ghana because we have the DDEP and still now trying to find a way of negotiating our external debt, which has brought us to a kind of standstill. So the best way in all this is to promote a system that is fair and equitable. And we believe that that way will encourage more compliance and it will help government in improving their revenue positions to finance their budget. So the tax equity campaign, this is our approach. Generally, and I'm sure all of us here will bear witness, that tax conversations have been limited to very few privileged persons or people. Normally those in parliament are those who get to know. A typical example is the e-levy. Government started consultation after passing the bill. Who does that? How do you influence, how do you get people's inputs into a tax law after you have passed the bill? So it was more like an informative session rather than a consultative session that was taking citizens' views. And we believe that for a fairer tax system or to promote equity, citizens need to have an input. At the end, we are the one paying. It's going to be our money, and therefore, we believe that citizens need to have an input on shaping the tax conversation in the country. Okay, the narrative is changing gradually, as we have seen, even in Ghana. I think gradually they are beginning to engage, but not the engagement me and you would like to see. Some of the engagement tend to be more like tick-the-box approach. You know, before budgets, government, they know by law they are obliged to engage key actors, including civil society. But I hope that going forward this will change because it's becoming too obvious that most of times you get called 9 a.m. in the morning and then you are meeting the finance minister 12 o'clock. Even in my house, the budget I used to prepare my banku and tilapia, I need more than 4 hours. And then national budget, you call me 9, expect me to be there 12. So we believe that going forward, policymakers need to make deliberate effort to engage and solicit input. But that will only come in if there's that strong tax knowledge among us, there's more collaborative spirit between us, and therefore we're able to demand a collective accountability from our people. So we aim to work with and support movements and coalitions. So this is IBP's our position, to promote tax systems where everyone pays their share. We believe that when more people are paying, when everybody is paying, it even impacts on the rate. Most times, I think there was one paper we were reviewing that Ghana tax rates are high because those who are paying are lower. Therefore, government is compelled to make it higher on the very few who are caught in the tax net. and also explains why we have so many indirect taxes. Ghana has about 15 indirect taxes, probably one of the highest in the world. We have all this, which makes those in the formal sector having to pay more because of the issue of getting everyone to contribute their fair share. And also to make sure that the revenue that comes out provides services for everyday people and not just the privileged few. So the tax equity project, Ghana becomes the 4th country alongside Senegal, Nigeria, and Tanzania. But actually it was Nigeria and Senegal, and Tanzania and Ghana just joined the pilot and getting to the tail end of this year. And the initiative is ending in 2025. But hopefully, the things we are going to do, the work that we believe that we're going to work together, we'll have the momentum to carry on post-IBP. What will be sad is to see the beautiful initiative dying out because our funding runs out. But I believe that with our collaborative work, we'll be able to sustain the initiative by the IBP. So it's a 2 years and blah, blah, blah. But these are the 2 key things we seek to achieve. I've already explained them anyway. To improve the collective capacity of civic coalitions to engage in effective tax advocacy, to build the capacities of us, to make sure that we always work in coalition. There's always power in numbers. And then also to ensure that tax administration systems provide meaningful spaces for increased civic participation, and not just giving 2 hours to come and make an input, but a meaningful, deliberate attempt to engage for our input. So who do we seek to engage? Again, CSOs, coalitions and movement, organized groups, including the labor unions, the trade unions, women, youth groups, those in academia, professional bodies, and the government. And one key thing is that IBP believes in constructive engagement with the government over the antagonistic relationship that sometimes seek to exist. I think most of times, some of our politicians see civil society as, sorry to say, nuisance. But we want to move away from that notion that we all have a country to build, and we are prepared to offer our services, our expertise, our mobilization spirit to support an equitable tax system in Ghana. So to end it, what do we envisage? We envisage a Ghana where revenues are raised in a way that advances equity, and where the lawmakers, media, civil society, and all key stakeholders I've mentioned play critical and not dormant, but active voices in shaping the tax system in Ghana. Thank you very much.
Yes. So I would hand over to the Guta president. He actually has a lot to do today, but you saw me hijacking him to stay with us. So he will quickly do a quick word for us, and then, Doc.
Hello. Good morning. I hope we all know that the time is not right for traders. This is the last time that we can make a little, then we are hauled here to come and talk about tax. We should have been given a break, small, but then it's for the cause of the nation, so we don't have any option than to come. The topic is very interesting. Once we demand equitable distribution of the national wealth, that's what most Ghanaians have been saying from one region to the other. We are all seek for equitable distribution of the national wealth. if that is so, then we are not far from right when we say that we also demand equitable distribution of taxes. It is very important. Taxes that we pay here in this country is being recycled along just a few of us, especially those who even have the potential to grow, are being overburdened with taxes that their businesses are crumbling. GRA have made us understand that about 13 million of Ghanaian citizens have the capacity to pay taxes, but just a few, over 4 million, do pay these taxes. So where lies the equity that we're talking about? So it's very important that we take this discussion seriously. And that's why I have to sacrifice my time also to be here. All that we seek as businesses is fairness and parity. If you're able to have this, all that it means is that the taxes that have been so many on just a few is going to be fairly distributed and is going to be affordable for all if the spread is wide. But that's not what we see. There are a lot more people outside the tax net that need to be roped in so that government can have its worth. But we are not thinking outside the box to bring all these people in. But once we have been able to identify the few who are rather compliant and paying the legitimate taxes, then we pile out these taxes on them. And this is what is taking, is not making businesses grow. Now we're talking about productivity. How can we be able to produce when we are being overtaxed? Even the produce that turned out is going to be expensive, and that you are not going to be affordable. So spreading the tax net and make it equitable is the surest way that the country should look. We have identified certain problems with the VAT, and we are articulating, and it's bringing problem because of this same issue of equitability. Because the VAT as it's structured now does not ensure compliance because of the fact that it is not fair. Because one tax system is not uniform. It has three phases. That we have those who pay the standard rate of 22%, those who pay the flat rate of 4%, and yet another group who are not made to pay the VAT at all because of the threshold of 200,000, that they do not meet the threshold, so they are not to register and pay this VAT. And we are all in the same vicinity of trading. We are all found in the same space of trading. There's no compulsion on the part of the consumer, because VAT is a consumption tax. It's not the person the trader who has to pay. It's the consumer who has to pay. But the way the tax is structured, the system is structured, does not ensure compliance on there's no compulsion on the consumer to even go for VAT invoice, because the market, you have provided those who do not pay, and it's legitimate. So he has the discretion to buy from whichever one is cheaper. And of course, the person who is not charging the VAT definitely is going to have the field day having all the customers. That's why lately you've seen a lot of agitations coming from Abusuka and Kumasi. Only yesterday, Central Region had a press conference, and that they say the tax should be restructured. So it is very important. We have also seen that there are a lot more people outside the tax net that when we are able to bring them on board, it's also going to help us so that the number of taxes that we pay will be reduced for those who are identified. Let's take the construction industry, for instance. There are a lot more people in the real estate now, the people who build their personal houses, and look at the people that are being employed in this sector, the electricians, the painters, the POP people, the tilers. But if you look at the money that goes to the construction sector, it's a huge sums of money that goes there. If even 30% goes to these artisans and they are being taxed, it means that it's going to show up the government tax revenue that they seek. And so for us, we believe that and we seek that taxes should be made to be fair. It should be made to bring parity, and it should be made to be simplified and affordable, and then cut across every spectrum of taxpayer, so that the little that we all pay and pay it equitably will bring the much needed funds that we need. We said that Ghana, among the sub-region, ours is the lowest, the tax to GDP. Yes, it is true, because the taxes that we pay here are so high and very complex, and it's not equitably distributed for just a few people to pay. Whilst in the other sub-region, the taxes are simplified, affordable, and that it ensures compliance, and that they are able to get tax to GDP very high, more than that of Ghana, which rather and unfortunately is paying much higher taxes. If you are paying higher taxes compared to those who are paying lower and they are getting tax to GDP higher than yours, then you know that the taxes that you are charging is not correct and is not ensuring compliance. So I will not take all your time, but to say that we seek this equitable distribution of taxes to rope in a lot more people. I'm not thinking about the vertical or horizontal type of this equity that we are talking, that if you are rich, you have to pay more. If you are no. That's why we do the income tax. So the income tax that we pay will distribute these taxes proportionally for all of us. All that we have to do is to be able to rope in a lot more people who have the capacity to pay these taxes, to pay their bit in an affordable manner, so that the country will have the wealth. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Doc. Can we please give him a round of applause again? Doc, thank you. And so quickly, the branch is ready. We'll go for our snacks, but we'll have our group photograph, and then we'll go downstairs for the snack break, and then we'll come back quickly. We'll jump straight into the group work, and then we'll follow with the panelist discussion.
So yes, group photograph downstairs. Feel free to bring your snacks with you. We really want it to be quick, and the 6 panelists, if you can come see me after we take the photograph. I will assign you some work. So I hope you'll allow me. All right, so group photograph.
Can we please come so that we'll have some sit, and then we'll file behind them? That'd be fine. Yes, so please come. I'll have my panelists sit, and then we'll file behind them. Who's running away from photo? I hear you have to come so that we catch photo quick. In Karim's words. So our panelists, please come and sit, and then the rest of us, let's file behind them. Thank you so much for your patience. Please, let's come, please. And how come the media people always don't want to join the photograph? Join. Thank you, I'm loving this one. Let's all filing, please. Aha. Oh, Bishop is here, okay. Oh, Doc, please. Please sit down. Yeah, they're here. The panelists are sitting. Oh, Doc, what's your bra? Where's Nancy? 1 second. Doc, please come. Oh, Moise, probably. Yes, please sit. Where's Dr. Ampabe? Please don't hide. Please, Dr. Ampabe, please come. What about madam? I meet you. You see? We are talking about equity today. Okay, so equity. I see. Oh, but the women are nicely filed there. You have to practice it. So we'll all go down, so there's the floor down, and then please, if you want to use a washroom on that same floor, extreme left. We're just doing 10 minutes, so you can grab the snack and come up here, please. Please. Right. We're back at 11:15. So all panelists, please come. Sir Bishop, please. We would like to have all the panelists here. So, yes. Mr. Paddy, please come. Yes, the panelists will be here. I have them here. I have Mr. Bodo is here. Dr. Bishop is coming. Oh, Dr. Mpabe. Dr. Mpabe, please.
As COVID-19 spread around the world, governments launched massive spending measures to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly $14 trillion globally. The International Budget Partnership did a rapid assessment of 120 countries' performance on transparency, oversight, and public participation in COVID relief packages. Here is what we found. 2/3 of countries failed to provide enough information on the relief packages they introduced. Almost half bypassed their legislatures. Citizen participation was rare. Governments had to act fast, but too many used the excuse of urgency to not be as transparent, accountable, or inclusive as they could be. It doesn't have to be this way. Togo, New Zealand, and Canada are among the countries prioritizing women who are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. In Nepal, legislators set up a committee to investigate irregularities in the purchase of medical equipment and supplies. El Salvador and Peru's governments set up channels for citizens to monitor spending. In Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Jamaica, national auditors checked the receipts. Those who were misspending were held accountable. These countries are showing a different approach is possible. Want to know how your country rates? To learn more, visit internationalbudget.org/COVID. As COVID-19 spread around the world, governments launched massive spending measures to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly $14 trillion globally. The International Budget Partnership did a rapid assessment of 120 countries' performance on transparency, oversight, and public participation in COVID relief packages. Here is what we found. 2/3 of countries failed to provide enough information on the relief packages they introduced. Almost half bypassed their legislatures. Citizen participation was rare. Governments had to act fast, but too many used the excuse of urgency to not be as transparent, accountable, or inclusive as they could be. It doesn't have to be this way. Togo, New Zealand, and Canada are among the countries prioritizing women who are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. In Nepal, legislators set up a committee to investigate irregularities in the purchase of medical equipment and supplies. El Salvador and Peru's governments set up channels for citizens to monitor spending. In Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Jamaica, national auditors checked the receipts. Those who were misspending were held accountable. These countries are showing a different approach is possible. Want to know how your country rates? To learn more, visit internationalbudget.org/COVID.
Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold. There's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about. Tax equity means paying your fair share. In a lot of countries, maybe broadly across the world, if I can be so bold, there's this sense that some people are not paying their fair share. Some people are not putting into the system what they're getting out. And tax equity aims to solve that problem. Very wealthy people are not paying enough of their taxes, but are benefiting more from public service delivery than the poorest communities. Poorest communities often don't have a choice. They're forced or coerced into paying taxes that might be too high or multiple taxes because they don't have the political power and the wealth to avoid taxes. And so how do we solve that problem? How do we make it impossible for government to ignore these poorer taxpayers? So that's what tax equity broadly is about.
As COVID-19 spread around the world, governments launched massive spending measures to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly $14 trillion globally. The International Budget Partnership did a rapid assessment of 120 countries' performance on transparency, oversight, and public participation in COVID relief packages. Here is what we found. 2/3 of countries failed to provide enough information on the relief packages they introduced. Almost half bypassed their legislatures. Citizen participation was rare. Governments had to act fast, but too many used the excuse of urgency to not be as transparent, accountable, or inclusive as they could be. It doesn't have to be this way. Togo, New Zealand, and Canada are among the countries prioritizing women who are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. In Nepal, legislators set up a committee to investigate irregularities in the purchase of medical equipment and supplies. El Salvador and Peru's governments set up channels for citizens to monitor spending. In Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Jamaica, national auditors checked the receipts. Those who were misspending were held accountable. These countries are showing a different approach is possible. Want to know how your country rates? To learn more, visit internationalbudget.org/COVID. As COVID-19 spread around the world, governments launched massive spending measures to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly $14 trillion globally. The International Budget Partnership did a rapid assessment of 120 countries' performance on transparency, oversight, and public participation in COVID relief packages. Here is what we found. 2/3 of countries failed to provide enough information on the relief packages they introduced. Almost half bypassed their legislatures. Citizen participation was rare. Governments had to act fast, but too many used the excuse of urgency to not be as transparent, accountable, or inclusive as they could be. It doesn't have to be this way. Togo, New Zealand, and Canada are among the countries prioritizing women who are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. In Nepal, legislators set up a committee to investigate irregularities in the purchase of medical equipment and supplies. El Salvador and Peru's governments set up channels for citizens to monitor spending. In Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Jamaica, national auditors checked the receipts. Those who were misspending were held accountable. These countries are showing a different approach is possible. Want to know how your country rates? To learn more, visit internationalbudget.org/COVID. As COVID-19 spread around the world, governments launched massive spending measures to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly $14 trillion globally. The International Budget Partnership did a rapid assessment of 120 countries' performance on transparency, oversight, and public participation in COVID relief packages. Here is what we found. 2/3 of countries failed to provide enough information on the relief packages they introduced. Almost half bypassed their legislatures. Citizen participation was rare. Governments had to act fast, but too many used the excuse of urgency to not be as transparent, accountable, or inclusive as they could be. It doesn't have to be this way. Togo, New Zealand, and Canada are among the countries prioritizing women who are disproportionately impacted by the crisis. In Nepal, legislators set up a committee to investigate irregularities in the purchase of medical equipment and supplies. El Salvador and Peru's governments set up channels for citizens to monitor spending. In Zambia, Sierra Leone, and Jamaica, national auditors checked the receipts. Those who were misspending were held accountable. These countries are showing a different approach is possible. Want to know how your country rates? To learn more, visit internationalbudget.org/COVID. As COVID-19 spread around the world, governments launched massive spending measures to address the COVID-19 pandemic. Nearly $14 trillion globally. The International Budget Partnership did a rapid assessment of 120 countries' performance on transparency, oversight, and public participation in COVID relief packages. Here is what we found. 2/3 of countries failed to provide enough information on the relief packages they introduced. Almost half bypassed their legislatures. Citizen participation.
Tea, your orange and, I think it's orange and pineapple. Or something, orange and passion. What have you. If you still have the meat pie or the cupcakes, that's fine. As long as you are filtering your way back into the room, I would appreciate it. So, in interest of time, I will take us through what's going to happen for the next little bit. So, I'm going to invite Abdul Karim Mohammed, who is standing next to me. What is your title at ACT Africa? Team lead at ACT Africa, who will take us through the political economy context of Ghana as it is right now. It'll be a short presentation, 20 minutes, and then I will invite our panelists to come collect some materials from me. They will distribute themselves within the room, and they will lead some group discussions, and I will tell you what the questions are going to be. As I said, this is going to be a working meeting, so if you came here to catch up on your sleep, this is the wrong place. And from that, we'll go into our panel discussion and Q&A. So that's the next little chunk of time. And so with that, I'd like to welcome Abdul Karim Mohammed to the podium. Can I please get a round of applause just to, oh, please. Thank you. Thank you. All right, over to you.
Thank you very much, Faria, for that. And good morning, everyone. As I've been introduced, I'm Abdul Karim Mohammed. And I've been given 20 minutes to talk about the political economy of taxation in Ghana. As you can appreciate, even if you are to talk about just the politics, but to add the economy to it and do it in 20 minutes is quite Herculean, you get it? So I will need your support for us to do that. But I want us to start from the beginning. Let's try and spend the next 1 minute to just pick our own minds around why do we pay tax? Why? I need just about 2 answers. Volunteers, quickly. Let's operate like Akobam this thing.
Basically to raise revenue.
Raise revenue, okay, good. Yes.
For development.
For development. Okay. Do you all agree with them? Okay. So what they have told us, they have actually told us the importance. I was asking why we pay the tax. You get it? That is one thing that tax communication always gets it wrong. You understand? We are always told it's because we need to build roads, we need to build schools, we need to do A, B, C, D. But the real reason why we pay tax is because of this. There's something called a social contract. Under the concept of social contract, there is a relationship between us and our governments. We give part of our freedom to our government. We give them the power, we vote them, we house them, we buy all those things, and they make laws and govern us. The power that we have given to them, they are supposed to provide us some basics of our life. I mean, basic public goods, security, protect our human rights. We have a functioning society. Then they are supposed to also what? Account to us. That is why we pay tax. We also undertake our civic responsibility of voting. And we do our national service and all those services that we provide. You understand? So we pay the tax as part of it's a social contract that binds us to pay the tax. Otherwise, if we are giving our free will, we will not pay. In fact, the tax is one thing that nobody actually willingly wants to pay. But we are bound by what? The social contract. You understand? Now, it is because citizens don't realize that power that we have vested in a few people to govern us, and we give them money in addition to deliver the goods and services. So sometimes when they do something for us, what do we say? We thank government for. You understand? And we mobilize chiefs and elders, sometimes with cow and whatever, and go and thank government for. And when we need something, what do? We beg government for. You understand? We don't see, we don't have. That concept of social contract is lost on us. And if we are to push for equity, that is something that we need to bring our minds to. I needed us to establish that. You understand? Because, so we are not asking government to make tax equitable as a matter of a favor. No. It's not a favor we are asking. It's a matter of right. It's a matter of responsibility. Because we have given them that authority. Why am I saying this? No. Okay. Yeah. They have taken 3 minutes of my time already. All right. Okay. All right. Okay, so that needs to, and we also have to appreciate the fact that within the context in which we operate, there are a lot of forces that operate, you understand? The powerful are always trying to find a way to what? To get around the tax system. The poor are making, those who are rich to pay more. But the rich will also tell you, and businesses will tell you that, look, it is when you lower the taxes, and we are able to generate more employment, and we get more income, we pay more. You understand? Then the country will grow. So these the various countervailing forces should also be appreciated. Then why do we find ourselves? Civil society, where can we place ourselves? We must appreciate the environment that we work in. It's a messy arena. The main forces, 3 of them, the private sector, the political actors we call government, then also the household, or what we call the local community on this diagram. Then there is someone who tries to play the role of like an arbiter and go between, and that is the responsibility of civil society. And here we are talking about organized labor, the media, the traditional NGOs, all of our civil society. We play that role. We have the power. If you look at the lines, the bold lines are the relationships that exist between these. But the dash is what? The influence. We are the ones who are able to more or less interact with all these other members within the cycle. But it is not the business objective, as we all know. It traditionally used to be what? The bottom line, the so-called bottom line. They are supposed to make profit for their shareholders. That is it. Nowadays, as the world has advanced, we are now talking about bottom lines and not bottom line. So now we talk about how environmentally responsible a company is, besides the taxes that you are paying and several other social responsibility that we expect of corporate citizens. But the political actors' objective is also to maximize how much they were able to what? Extract from the businesses as well as households. People from the households are the ones paying income taxes. The companies are paying their corporate taxes and all that. But our responsibility in the middle is to what? To be able to moderate that engagement so that we make a case for those who don't have the voice. And that is why we are talking about what? Equity. Because if we are just to leave it, some of the taxes will just be slapped a flat rate, like the one they have just brought on the, what they call it, environmental tax. Whether you are driving a 5.70 liters or you are driving 1 liter, you are all paying the same thing. I don't know how equitable that is. You understand? Yeah. All right. So let's go quickly to the specifics. Ghana's political economy of taxation, what we must focus on, it's purely to look at who does what, when, and how. Who are the actors within the space? We need to have a clarity around that. We need to understand who occupies what space and what opportunities exist for us to be able to influence. So more specifically, we are looking at how tax policies are formulated. Most of the time, we are so disengaged to the extent that we don't know, we don't have our ears on the ground. To the extent that by the time we realize a law is being passed, a new, tax law has been what? Introduced in Parliament, sometimes under certificate of agency or whatever. Then when it is passed, then we'll be crying wolf. But if we are well connected, we play our influencing role well, we have developed the right relationship, there's no way a law will pass without, at least we will have a hint that the government is intending to bring something, so that we can also engage our parliamentarians, our representatives who are supposed to act on our behalf. Then the next one is that the tax structure and administration, who controls what, how and when. We have currently a raging matter, right? About some revenue assurances and who has done what, SML. It's currently raging. So the question is, in the tax administration, how has it been structured? Do we have fairness? Are all actors playing their role right? Sometimes, not too long ago, we had a situation where GRA officials had to be planted in some shops. You understand? Is that what is going to enhance the mobilization? But at the taxpayer, those who are also supposed to pay, were they also doing their right as is expected of them? That would have, what would have prompted that kind of reaction or action by the GRA? So that is also something important we need to do. So this is supposed to guide our discussion going forward. You understand? And we will limit it to the practical challenges. So I'm taking you right into what opportunities exist within the political space. Now, we all know 2024 general elections are coming up. And in this country, we have deliberately resolved not to have a long-term development plan. So we use the short-termist approach, the medium-term development plans or whatever. We have the GPRS1, GPRS2. Currently, I don't even know the name of the current development framework that we are using. And one common thing is that our development is to a very large extent dictated by the manifestos of the ruling political parties. So for now, until we have a long-term development plan, it becomes a very important piece of policy document that we need to influence. Because whatever is captured in there ends up becoming our national development, more or less, guide. Right? So when the current government came in, they classified some of the existing taxes as nuisance taxes. Because it wasn't aligned with the manifesto that they had put forward. Well, subsequent events, I think they have revised their notes, and now we are seeing a lot more coming back in different names. But if you don't have your voice in there, if you are not able to influence that document, that is what ends up happening. So that is a classical opportunity for 2024 as the parties begin to formulate their manifestos. Another one is the current IMF program that we have subscribed to, the extended credits facility of $3 billion for 3 years. Any one of you who have taken a look at the document, you realize that it's very heavy on what? On the revenue side. It's very, very heavy on the revenue side because our tax performance has been said to be not at par, even with our peers within the sub-region. So we are being pushed to mobilize a lot more revenue. We have made a case for them to also look at the expenditure side, but that has not gained a lot of traction as much. So you will see a lot of new tax policies that are being introduced. But how are they being formulated? Are we influencing them to be more equitable? There are a lot to be said in there. So that also presents a very good opportunity. Working together with the Economic Governance Platform and the rest, a lot of suggestions were put in there, which were taken up. But there is a lot more that can also be done because government is trying to hit the target. Then there is currently a raging issue around the discovery of lithium and the kind of contract or agreement for now that we have signed with the company. Well, it presents a very good opportunity for us to begin to have a serious national conversation, not just on the lithium, but the entire extractive sector. The fiscal regime that we are using, is it at par with the realities of our time, or we are still living in the past? You understand? So there's a lot of conversation that we need to have. So that also presents a very good opportunity for us to look at reforms within the extractive sector. And again, we have a very vibrant civil society working on, a number of them working on taxes. How do we collaborate rather than working in silos? How do we collaborate so that, we create a force multiplier, right? Because there is strength in numbers. There is the strength in numbers rather than going as lone voices. How do we work together? Then, of course, the budget cycle. Year in, year out. When the budget is coming up, it's either government is going to either abolish some tax or introduce new ones, right? Sometimes it may not come in the form of a tax, but it will do fees and charges, all of them. But where they are imposed will determine who is going to be affected most. And it is our role and responsibility to keep our eyes on the ball on that so that it is, to ensure that it is equitable. Then, of course, we have a very powerful media. And now, in addition to that, we also have a lot of social media that is being used for influencing. How do we harness this? Do we still maintain that relationship of keeping the media on the side and only inviting them to come and cover events? Or we identify them as partners, develop relationship, long-term relationship, so that we are in this together. It's not like I'll come and cover my event and report it. When they report it, they are gone. But if they are part of us they are collaborators, and we are developing the strategies together. They see their skin in the game, right? And they will take us for the longer haul rather than just the short-term engagement. And even that one, you don't give them enough transport, so they'll put your story at the back page. All right. An improved working relationship between civil society and key state institutions. Yes, Dr. Mpabi made that point. I mean, gone were the days when civil society was seen as just rabble-rousers and just making noise, causing agitation. Now you know the field. You have Mpabi, he has PhD in taxation. He's working in civil society. My brother here looking at me. Huh? You said I shouldn't say anything. We have a lot of expertise within the space now, right? So we need to bring that to bear, develop the necessary relationship, and I mean, to admit it. Now the decision makers have also realized the important role that civil society also play, in the sense that some of them are proactive enough to reach out and ask for your input and all that. But we need to strengthen that kind of relationship, because there are a number of them that also pass. I mean, the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources the other day was admitting that yes, they should have had prior engagement with civil society before doing the agreement on the lithium. You understand? The same thing Dr. Ales also mentioned about, Dr. Mpabi mentioned about the e-levy. It was post, I mean, when they hit the snag in Parliament, that was when they decided to go out and engage. So we should have done that. Yes, don't worry, I have about 2 more slides. Then let's go to the, okay, good. Let's go to the challenges we continue to have. This is the reality we face. And it is not just here, it's everywhere. But ours seem to be too ingrained, particularly between our 2 political parties. If you are not NDC, you are MPP. Here, even when you are saying the truth, the person knows that what you are saying is good. What does it belong to? Once they are, they will find somewhere to put you. Okay, so that is a big challenge that we need to overcome. We need to be aware of that and know and devise strategies to work around that. Then we also have limited political will and courage. Sometimes it's not just the will. You see the politicians want to do something, but they don't have the courage to. When they look left, right, say it will affect the votes. You understand? Then, so we need to give them that, backstopping so that government can do what is right. Limited and even shrinking funding opportunities for civil society. You are in this space. I don't need to talk a lot more. But, I mean, on the positive side, I will also say a lot more of the funding that has shifted from the traditional governance work is also now coming towards enhancing revenue mobilization and the rest. So if you look well, you will find. But generally, there is funding is actually shrinking. Then the absence of national tax strategy document. Yes, we don't have a harmonized national strategy. Recently, the GRA, together with the Ministry of Finance, prepared a medium-term revenue mobilization strategy, and we all made input. So that is something that we can tap into for us to have a national, what they call revenue strategy, tax strategy. Then, of course, the lack of awareness within the general public. And another challenge is also, a lot of the time, the tax language that we speak is too complicated. We use very, very, big vocabularies, and we confuse everyone and our own selves. So how do we make it, reader-friendly and audience-friendly? Then the absence of long-term partnership with the media, I've mentioned that one. Then lack of collaboration amongst ourselves. People want to have their logo on specific initiatives and not share the glory. But, that does not always inure to our collective good. Then, of course, a low level of capacity. It's not all of us who understand the tax. Well, some of them are quite complicated. And so we need to be aware of that and look at how we can address that. So going ahead, we are encouraging collaboration between CSOs on tax advocacy, relationship with the media, then also adopt a more evidence-based, evidence-driven kind of advocacy and improve collaboration with the state agency, as we have said. CSOs must also take advantage of the critical windows. Their main, if you take just the budget cycle, there are main key moments that we can tap into during the budget formulation, during midterm reviews, and all those things. Those are very critical moments that we can take advantage of. I've mentioned some of this, so we need to be proactive. We must employ more collaborative approaches. You have mentioned this, yes. I mean, so this is just to set the stage for the subsequent conversation that we are going to have. So this is just to tease out the issues, pick your brain on some of the matters so that it puts our conversation in context. So I thank you very much. Faria gave me 20 minutes. It's finished, right? Okay, thank you.
You actually had 30 seconds left.
Thank you very much.
No, for that, you have to Okay, once again, thank you for being timely. Thank you for delivering such a rich presentation. And I hope this has, I saw some looks in the audience. You know, it's like people are thinking, people are like, I need to respond to this and this point. And so on that note, instead of breaking for a Q&A, there is so much rich experience in this room, and so we're actually going to break into discussion groups. I'm going to come to the panelists, I'm going to distribute some materials to them, and I'm going to ask them to distribute themselves around the room. There's 6 people, so, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so if you're in a back row, please, come a bit forward, or the people in the front row, please turn around. And I will tell you what the discussion questions are. So let me start with the distribution of this at first. So 1, 2, it's like I'm giving you gifts. I'm coming. Yes. Of pens, markers, and Post-its, Alex, since you're one. You are. I've told you. So for you, sir. So, because each of the panelists have one. We have 6 panelists, so we have 6 groups. And so, panelists, may you please choose your corner, choose your distribution, because they will be discussion leaders. Yeah, so we need one person here in this corner who would like to come. One on this side. Yeah. Yeah, one. Are we well distributed? We need one. We need someone here. And then one in this corner, because this is actually a heavy corner. Even media folks, you're included in this. Yes, sir. So, sir, if you want to sit there and the people here can be there. Sir, maybe here? Yeah. Even if it's 3, 4 people, that's fine. Yes. Where's Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop? Yeah. No, because Alex is here. Sir is over here. Yeah. Yeah. So even if it's 3, 4 people, sir, maybe you can talk to someone there, and this can be, it doesn't matter, as long as there's, so he's here. And Richard, I don't know if you want to turn around, so that group. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Now that we have distributed ourselves, if I can have everyone's attention. Yes. Yeah. 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 All right. Do I have everyone's attention? Because I'm going to say these instructions maybe once or twice. Actually, could we just stop the registration for a moment? I really do want everyone's attention. So I'm just going to wait for that to be, on this I'm very serious, please. Okay, so you will see in these baskets Post-it notes. So everyone individually, grab 4 Post-it notes, and on 1 per Post-it note. So there are 4 questions, which is, you as an individual who are working in this sector or in a related field, right? From Kareem's presentation, 1, what did you think was missing? 2, what did you agree with? 3, what are the key, I'll repeat these, don't worry. What are the key stakeholders that need to be involved? and what strategies are important to achieve tax equity. So each one of you should fill out 4 post-its, one with the answer to each question. So you'll see on this wall here, I have 4 flip charts. So the idea is after we finish our discussion, you'll say, okay, I said this and this is missing on one post-it. I'll put it on the missing chart. I agree with this and this. So I'll put all my agreements on one post-it. You put it there. I have these ideas for strategies. It goes on the strategies post-it. And then these are the stakeholders. So I'm going to give everyone 5 minutes on your own. Please fill these 4 post-its. So each of you should have 4 post-its. And again, the questions are, from Kareem's presentation, what did you agree with? What is missing? And what are key strategies you think will be important to improve tax equity? And who might the key stakeholders be? Yes, sir. Okay. Jeff, who has everyone's email? Yeah.
We can write the email addresses.
Yeah. So, but do you want them right now, or just? I'll sort that. So again, if you are like, what are the questions? They're all over there. You see, it says agree, missing, strategies, stakeholders. So what do you agree with? What's missing? What strategies are important? And who are the key stakeholders? And I'll sort that. Yes, based on Kareem's presentation. See, I didn't say disagree. I just said what's missing. So you have to write these individually. I don't mind if you discuss, but please, you should have 4 post-its. Each person should have 4 post-its.
Each individual, you have 4 post-its.
Yes.
And then you're going to write, what did you... So for each individual in the group, you have 4 post-its. Pick 4. Yes. So what do you think was missing? Then you put it on one of the post-its. What did you agree with? Then you put it on the next poster. Do you have any strategy you think can improve? And then who are the key stakeholders that you think should be part of that process?
Great. So let's take 2-3 minutes. Everyone fill it out. And once you're done, hold on to them, because then we're going to have a group within your groups, you're going to have a discussion. So I'll give you some time. Each person, please fill out your 4 post-its. These nice post-its I brought from Germany. Please use them. So let's take maybe some 90 seconds more to finish up your thoughts on your post-its. Again, you will have time to discuss as a group. So this is really a moment for you to think about what you've heard, what you've digested. So a minute more. I think most people have done maybe 3 or 4, it seems like, from the energy in the room. Yeah. Can I just get a show of hands if you finished your 4 post-its, please? Okay, we have just a few. How many have finished 3? Oh. Okay, I'll give 2 more minutes. It's very important to us and to this process that we get your feedback, please. Okay, so volume rising is a good sign. It means that people are starting to finish up. So I think I'm seeing multiple post-its in front of people. This side. Where are your post-its? You've already done them. Okay, that's a good sign. All right, so then I want to invite, if you have your post-its, please hold on to them. Don't worry, we'll have the opportunity to go put them on the back of the room. My panelists who are discussion leaders. So I would like you to lead a group discussion on, what people think what is missing, what do you agree with, and I'd like for you to start because you represent a specific perspective. So, our panelists from the media, you can say from the media perspective, we agree with this, this, and this. We think this is missing. And invite feedback from the group discussion. From GRA, if you say from the GRA perspective, this is what's missing, this is what we need. So I invite each of the group leaders to present your perspective and then get feedback from the group around you. So Alex, please, we need you to lead your group here. All right, so let's take 10 minutes for this group discussion. And hold on to your post-its, please. If you need to move your chairs to be closer to hear people, maybe you want to put your chairs on the other side of the table, feel free. Maybe this group. Sir, do you want to maybe pull your chair back so people can hear you? Like, as in you can make a small circle. We are not tied to these seats. Please feel free to move how you need to have a fruitful discussion.
I, sitting from the government side, I was looking at efficiency from the perspective of how we collect the taxes. So very intriguing on the aspect. We were looking at how we also spend the money efficiency. So how we align the two is quite very important. You take it, and it has to speak with the issue of transparency. So I think I'll end it here.
Yeah. No, I mean, on that just last point, I'd say, like, you know, the organization I work for is called the International Budget Partnership. And we have, for 25 years, been looking at spending. And we said, to align really fiscal justice, you need to look at how money is being raised. So thank you. Our bookend gentleman. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, penny Guyana and Suasa. It's my main kana or Kayana and Sunasa. All right, good afternoon. My name is Michael Obodu. I'm a business journalist with TV3, arguably the largest private media house in the country. Thank you very much. I just had to slide that in. Okay, so I think for me what stood out in my group's discussion is the fact that tax equity is achievable. And I think that, of course, it's not going to be a walk in the park. It will involve bringing every key player to the table, from grassroots to international organizations that influence tax policies and the likes, from the World Bank and the IMF, who we are compelled to follow some of the policies they introduce, which may not necessarily be in interest of tax equity. Thank you very much.
And then last but not least, Dr. Bishop Akulogo.
Well, our group also discussed the centrality of this long-term development plan and our inability to hold the political actors to the national constitution and allowing them to freely run with short-term manifestos. But that discussion needs to be had within a larger social foundation framework. You see, when you talk about equity and taxation, it has to be grounded in a certain egalitarian ethos, from where you now derive the principle of each according to ability to pay, each according to your needs. Once we all accept in society that there's a minimum that all of us in society will not allow our people to fall. It's minimum level. And we all have a responsibility. A business has our permission to operate in society. So it is not just profit and loss and shareholder value. The rules on which they work and drive, the water, the electricity, and all of that is contributed by all of us. So we provide the capital, the labor, for them to be able to operate as a business. At the same time, we need business to survive so that they can provide us employment, also provide for the goods and services. So it's a two-way street. Now, allied to this is also the larger issue around, beyond narrow tax, the rents. You see, in a market economy, especially in developing countries, the market is either absent or it's inefficient. So rents would naturally occur. And those rents need to be collected and managed very efficiently, including the tax rents. But we don't hold our politicians to account. That's why 70–80% of the citizens have resigned from the state, and they are doing their own thing. And you want to bring them into the mainstream, but you haven't done enough to improve citizen-state relations. So at the heart of this, the relationship between citizens and the state. If the state plays its role well, because we did not elect them to act on our behalf. We elected them to act on our behalf, isn't it? And that links back to the social contract. That half that we have left is for us as citizens to organize ourselves, including holding them accountable to us. for the resources that we have entrusted them with, including the tax and the other rent revenues. So in the absence of a more accountable and transparent state, it's very difficult to bring many people back into the tax net. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and again, thank you all for, again, leading the discussion, providing your perspective. So I have a question for each of you. Again, in interest of time, I know that I'm going to try and say, if you can be short but sweet, 5 to 6 minutes on the question. And, thinking of this last intervention around citizen engagement, citizen understanding of the social contract. And it's come up also in the perspectives that have been presented, is the role of information, right? And how people get that information. So maybe I'll ask the first question actually to you, Michael, about, the media plays a critical role in taxes. However, the media is usually interested in sensational stories to drive traffic, which tax may not be able to offer. How do we change this narrative and get the media attention in tax equity conversations? So, it should be down there, yes.
Thank you very much. So if I understand your question, how do we get the media interested in tax equity conversations?
Or how can the media help us make tax equity more sensational or interesting? Or
okay,
yes,
great.
So a bit of both.
Sure. I think Karim made my work very easy because he literally hit the nail on the head with the media, especially when it comes to tax conversations. And I was coming on the offenses for the CSOs, but Karim already exploded it, so there's no need to go all out. But I feel that, especially with the CSOs, in their dealing with the media, unfortunately, it's almost like I was telling someone, it's like the lender of last resort. We are your final option in all your value chain, in all that you plan, and all that you think about. I dare ask, how many CSOs here have a budget proper for media, for instance? And you see, the point is that if you want us to be able to tell the story, we need to understand it enough and have walked the journey with you so that we are partners in delivering it and not just a channel for dumping information. And unfortunately, that is the narrative we are seeing now. And the other side also is the fact that the media landscape in Ghana has its own peculiar challenges, and one of them is human resource. We do not have enough journalists a lot of the times in the media houses, and two, we do not have the right skill set because some technical areas like what you discuss here, taxation, natural resource exploitation and the likes, required specialized skills. If a journalist who went to GIJ and did general journalism comes up, he may struggle, unfortunately, with some of these technicalities. And that's where you, the CSOs, come as a stopgap measure for that knowledge or skill set deficit. Because obviously, you handle the information, you handle the technicalities, and who else understands it better than you who analyzes it on a daily basis? So if you find a way to rope in the media, you will get the results that you want by seeing us as strategic partners rather than just last-end channels for communicating information.
Brilliant, short and sweet and powerful. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
My next question, it's like who do I want to maybe challenge of it next? Okay, speaking about narratives and, understanding and the technicalities, maybe I'll come to you, Dr. Alex Combat, around, CSOs. Forget civic actors. Broadly, if there is an extreme challenge with access to tax data, what is the GRA doing to change this to ensure that whether it's civic actors or media or academia, are able to access data? Again, this issue of where information is coming from, right? And the information should be coming from the GRA. So maybe, what is the GRA doing? But maybe to take the pressure off a little bit, I'll also say, what would the GRA like from the other stakeholders in the room on this issue of tax data?
Okay, so in terms of tax data, GRA has a lot of data. Actually, what GRA has done is to sign MOU with a lot of institutions, just to mention but a few of them. So we have MOU with National Identification Authority, DVLA, SNIT, NIA, and a few of them. Now, what we are doing is we're talking about data matching. And so we are getting their databases and matching with ours. And so currently, as I speak, we have data available in terms of taxpayer population. You know, when President of GUTA spoke, he mentioned that we have potential taxpayers of about 30 million. This is what he was talking about. So we have data from NIA, and we'll be able to match, and we are saying that these are potential taxpayers, and therefore we have to reach out to them using several strategies to be able to get them to pay the taxes.
Yeah, the mic, I think maybe that one's not so well. Like maybe, let's see, is this better?
Yeah. To get them to pay the taxes. So we have been able to match the data, and we have the database that is accessible to all other institutions, academia, the CSOs, and they can all fall on us. And a few of them that have actually fallen on us, we always give them the data. So in terms of tax data, there's no problem with it at all. We have that. Thank you.
But then there's the bit of like, what would you like in terms of other stakeholders who ask you for tax data? Are there, supply side challenges that you see other stakeholders playing a role in fixing?
Of course, so we will always rely on other stakeholders. Actually, we have been able to collaborate with some of these CSOs, and what they do is that they help us in terms of data, they help us in terms of assessing data and all that. So that is also working very well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. On this kind of theme, I'll actually ask Dr. Ampabeng, who is subbing in for the academia perspective. The question which you have written for yourself is, does the government use research or academic inputs on tax policies? If no, or if it's not a complete no, I know this also myself, if it's uneven, right, how do you make the government aware of the benefits of research in tax policies?
Thank you. How I wish Professor Lord Mensah was here to answer the question himself. But equally, I'm in academia. As you know, I also teach at the University of Birmingham on weekends. So it's my galamsey, yes. So I think I can speak something to it. As you said, you can't say completely it's a no. The government does not use data from our academia. But probably there's more that the government can do or should do going forward. One thing we have noticed, and I'm sure most of us here will bear witness, is that our governments are mostly very good at using external researchers and consultants. And no longer, I'm sure they are even still in town. And sorry, I'm not intent to pick on any organization, but you have the likes of Nathan, Mackenzie, who are still here. And we've been in a number of forums with them. And sometimes the narrative they are charting for us in Ghana is totally the opposite. This is not to discredit their ability, but it's also to recognize local capacity. We have more than what it takes. I mean, I sit here, I worked for, before joining IVP, was a United Nations tax consultant for the roster. So I could be sent to any country in the world doing their taxes. Then I stay in Ghana. We have the likes of Professor Bobkin, who is doing so well for the IMF and the World Bank. And a host of powerful names who understand the very context we are in Ghana. But then we would rather go spend millions of Ghana cedis to go and bring Mackenzie or external organizations who might have very little understanding of how our system is. We have a system that's about 60% or so dominated by informal sector. How is the guy sitting in London having understanding of Kalawele seller or cocoa seller and how they operate in Ghana. About all kinds of sellers. So not to discredit their capacity, we do appreciate them. They are powerful organizations, but I think in choosing them, maybe government could partner some of the local researchers with the international ones. If they are doing it already, then that's fine. I'm sure my colleagues here will be able to tell if they are doing it already with a local partnership. But I think more attention should be given to local partners, local researchers, teaming up with the university and research institutions and making good use of data. Clearly, there are a number of evidence that shows that government sometimes doesn't really do with data. We had the e-levy, where government said it's going to be 24% attrition rate. At that rate, it's going to be X amount of revenue, and there are lots of simulations that have gone on. Clearly, speaking to those in academia, we had a different position. And if, again, government had done enough consultation and enough research, it pays to get it right. One, you get to know who is where, who has the ability to pay what. And it limits the issue of bringing taxes and withdrawing them. Back again, we had the luxury vehicle levy, which two taxes were put into one. We had a tax that could, look at carbon emission, which I think now is being introduced. And then I say again, luxury. At that point, they said any car that's 3.0 or above was a luxury car. But the car that has been picking the bin from the streets, how do you classify that as a luxury? You might have a pickup that is not even power steered, but it's 3.0. How do you classify that as luxury? What the real luxurious vehicles of Lamborghini or Mercedes, which has about 2.5 liters, were going free. And that tax has to be withdrawn. So again, I believe that by teaming up with research institutions, with the university, we kind of form collaborative way of working. We work with people that understand the system and the very context where we operate. And I think that's the direction going forward. Government could and should do more. It empowers the local universities and researchers. Thank you.
Great. On this note of, the size of this issue that I'm going to ask about is one where, in certain cases, you've seen actually very good collaboration between academia and government and research and the role it can play in influencing government policy, and also where sometimes government, and I never want to say doesn't want to give data, often it might not have the capacity to give this data due to things like political will or data constraints. It's illicit financial flows. And so on this, I'd like to turn to Dr. Bishop, who is here as the UNCTAD consultant on illicit financial flows, to ask you, sir, illicit financial flows affect tax revenues and subsequently tax equity. What is the situation here in Ghana, and how do we address the issue of IFFs?
Well, the issues of illicit financial flows is a global problem, but it's more acute in developing countries like ours, where we have less capacity to deal with the multinationals who are dominating our economies. In the case of Ghana, various studies that have been done by CSOs, the University of Ghana, and other external studies show that it's a real problem. And there are various estimates of how much we've lost as a result of illicit financial flows. Other is because of transfer pricing, profit shifting, intellectual property shifting. All of those contribute. And it is rampant in import and export, in banking, and investments. All of those channels contribute to illicit financial flows. Now, one study that ISODEC led, which in 2014, in our trade with the US and Europe, the two jurisdictions alone, for the period 2000 to 2012, they estimated about $4.2 billion possible losses. There are other studies that have also come up with figures, possibly even worse than that. But to be able to deal with this, the main weakness is that government of Ghana, the agencies are not working together. So inter-agency collaboration and coordination is one area that is allowing some of these things to happen. So government would do well to strengthen inter-agency collaboration. The Ghana Statistical Service has set up an inter-agency group to try and come up with a measurement. So all the figures that have been thrown about, they now have the mandate to bring finality to the figures and say for this period, 2000 to 2022, these are the possible losses from illicit financial flows, the inflows and outflows. And then the rest of us can stop quoting different figures at different times. But again, the various agencies, and the biggest destinations where this happens most rapidly, UAE, South Africa, Nigeria, Greece, Ukraine used to be on a list, but not for some time now, not yet, and China. So the risks are geography-based, they're also commodity-based. The commodities that are most vulnerable are timber, gold especially, even cocoa, then the oil. They're all vulnerable to illicit financial flows. So our vulnerability and tension exposure to illicit financial flows is caused largely by our partners who we do trade with. So the level of vulnerability depends on the secrecy jurisdiction you do business with and the size of the transaction we do with those jurisdictions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so, you know, multinational corporations are often seen as the big bad. And so I want to, maybe kind of in light of that, ask this question to Mr. Joseph Paddy. So, Guta is always up against taxes which do not benefit their members, right? And maybe I can even posit that part of the reason these taxes come up is because of the leakages that occur due to tax abuse by multinational corporations. But so, this thing of like, oh, okay, we're always against taxes. But are you always against taxes? Is this always the case? And how do we balance this position with the tax equity campaign, right? If we all agree taxes need to, be paid for the development of the country, the strengthening of the social contract, and then a tax comes and you're like, no. So how do you balance that against, the well-being of your members?
Yes. Let me say emphatically that we are not against taxes. Yes, but we are against the leakages of the taxes, where too much exemptions are given to certain corporations, and that they come in the name of manufacturing concerns, they come in the name of investment. You go to the free zones, who monitors the activities of those people who come in the name of manufacturing concerns and in the name of investment. Some come after 5 years, they change their position, and then they rename the company, and they still enjoy the exemptions. And when you come to the market space, the question that is in the minds of our people is that the taxes you are collecting, what are you using it for? They are demanding, is the demand, that what are you using our taxes for? So that if our people see physicals, see things with their eyes, because almost everything that we do in this country, we say we borrow the money from outside. So the taxes you are collecting from us, where are the taxes going? So if they are to see what you use our money for, when you go for them for more. I remember once upon a time, the minister came to us and said we have a challenge in our financial position, and therefore we wanted to introduce some 2% special levy at the port. We agree with them because the country needs money, the government needs money. But what we also see is that most times GRA and other stuff talk about revenue mobilization, but they hardly talk about trade facilitation. But you can't mobilize revenue when you don't facilitate the activities of the business community. So these are some of the difficulties we find in our space. So we believe that if government is to partner, and most time when government is coming out with tax policies, we are not engaged. So we always resist it and fight it. But if you make stakeholder participation, and then we make an input into your tax policy that you are bringing, we will then sell it to you. I remember when government wanted to introduce 3% flat rate during the late ban reduce time, the man invited us, and he said, the informal sector are so huge, they are not paying anything to government. What can we do so that they can also bring something to the basket? But before I talk about that, I think we have to change the name the basket, because the basket keep on leaking. Yes. See, if you can change the basket to bucket. Yes, because there's too much leakage in our tax system. So the man spoke to us. So we had a meeting, and he said in between input and output, there's a percentage in there. It's about 5%. So can you pay flat rate of 4%? We argued over it, and finally we agreed at 3%. And that year, when government agreed to do the flat rate 3%, they generated a lot of revenue, and they met their target. So stakeholder participation and engagement is critical in tax formation and tax policies and tax law. But we don't see it in this part of the world. The taxes are imposed on us. That's why you always see us good fighting against it. So when something is imposed on you, you find it hard to accept it. But if we participate and we make input into the policies, we believe we all buy into it. So this is some of the difficulties we find as a training community. Yes.
Great, thank you so much. And I have deliberately left the Ministry of Finance, Dr. Philip Thompson, the tax policy unit, the policy side, to give the last word. I mean, of course, throughout this, there's this thing of, you need revenue. That's an undeniable fact. And year on year, the government wants to increase revenue. And, there's this balance between efficiency of tax and equity of tax, right? Some taxes, very broadly, that are easy to administer, easy to formulate, easy to collect, tend to be not so equitable. And so going forward, and not ignoring the context in which we're in, I think the last budget said the government needs to raise 11 billion CDs in revenue. Yes, yes, additional, very important, 11 billion additional CDs. How do you see from your perspective, how do we balance this tax equity, like the equity perspective, and then, this revenue targets, the quantum, if you will?
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this is quite a difficult question, but it's something that we cannot run away from. It's very important we try and address it head on. As to whether it can justifiably be addressed is another issue. But as you did indicate, from my perspective, so I'll take it from my perspective, because even within the government itself, we may have varying perspective, okay? But at the end, we agreed to go with a perspective for the good of, sometimes it may not be in the public domain, but for the good of the nation. Yes, most of these ones, probably let me just pick it from there. In the political discussion that we had, the presentation, I think it was evident, okay, on why sometimes the way government comes out with some of these policies. But I want to step back a bit and say that sometimes it is not all like the government, let me just put it, it's not the will of the government to go that way, but we do it for the good of the bigger, the broader citizenry. And I give this I try to explain this within the context of where we are now. We're talking about the 11 billion additional revenue. And I think this is a public information, right? We are currently in a program with the fund, right? And as you do know, the broad issue is to try and stabilize the macro. We are in a very difficult situation. The Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister of Finance, Ken, has not hidden from that fact, right? So within such context, when you are coming out with certain policies, there are certain considerations that you may a bit overlook, okay? And within this, you try to balance the issue of equity and raising the required revenue to be able to finance or need the financing needs. Even within that, there is still a huge gap. Yes, we are privy to the fact that even the very productive base who are supposed to support the basket really are suffering. When you look at the current program that we had, the debt, as part of the program, we had to restructure debt and all that. Who are the most affected? These are the businesses and the citizens who contribute to the kitty, right? They are affected, but within the same space, even within the same space, we are positioning ourselves to increase more. And somebody say, how? Let me put it, how bad can the government be? But we are doing that for the good of the nation, as I did indicate, and that's why we are coming out with the 11 billion additional tax, which obviously may affect the vulnerable. By in doing that, we also have to trigger your your social protection to see how you abate to the large extent cushion the vulnerable. So we have this kind of dichotomy, right? So he talked about the issue of like I think it's in the currently we are putting a statement when he's talking about pollution, a flat rate and all that. Yes, these were proposals that were brought there, but I can assure us that it will come out with the equity concerns addressed. But I'm saying that if we had our own the free space within the ecosphere, if we had a free space and knowing the canons of taxation, there are some of the tax policies that may not come out the way it comes out. So that is where I want our CSOs really to be mindful of. And we are open, our doors are open for them to engage us. Right now we do a lot with the tax practitioners and other civil society as well. They come, they submit inputs, okay? I really, I want to always step back when I'm talking about this because I think my colleagues are here and I want them to really appreciate some of these things. So for instance, the matter the e-levy. Sometimes you may be marveled when we tell you that some of these things, even the consultations, may not have been initially they thought may not have been extensively discussed. Because you look at the data out there and within the time space, because of the fiscal requirements, you are really moved really to go ahead of yourself, really to bring out some of these things. So you might have the primary data, the preliminary one. You may not have time to interrogate the data. Yes. So some of these is, I'm saying that when we bring some of these tax policies, I can tell you that we do engagement, but it may not be extensive enough. And we are saying that our doors are open, really, to engage. We may have the input from the CSO, but it may not reflect the way they might have. Bro, it doesn't mean that we do not engage, but we sometimes do some of these things. Even though we have the equity consideration, we may not be able to really satisfy that principle. But we may do that. We may, whatever comes out, even though we may not be able to justifiably address the issue of equity, we may bring a position which may not even inure to our benefit, but we may do that for the national good. So that is the kind of idea that I want us to really carry across. But once we're able to get there, we then try to correct whatever inequity that there are in the system. But now within the current scope of the ECF, there may be so many measures which may not meet this kind of principle that we are talking about. And because we are not in normal times. And that is what we want everybody to take on board. Right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. Is this working? It's not. Oh, there. These mics. I'm standing too close. Thank you for that. And thank you for the honesty behind that statement. Maybe if there's some quick reactions to what the panel has said to each other, let's do that, then we'll go do Q&A, because I know Dr. Bishop has to leave. So I don't know if the panel, if there's anything you feel moved to react to from what your co-panelists have said. I know, sir, Dr. Combat, you have the mic in your hand. I think you are going to say something. And then we can go from there. So again, quick, 1 minute, 90-second intervention from each of you. Only if you want, no pressure.
Actually, there was this issue about the academia, their research, how...
Maybe, is there another mic that maybe is working a bit better? Yes, this one's louder. Yes, perfect.
Yes, there was this issue about the academia and how we are actually collaborating with them. Actually, we do. The problem is, Ghana Revenue Authority, as well as Ministry of Finance, have very strong research departments. And so a lot of the researches that should have gone to the academia, you see them being carried out within. So that is what I want them to know, that we are not necessarily taking researches out there, to the international community, but most of them are actually being carried out internally. In fact, we have had researches that, the academia carried out, and we actually utilize them. One example is VALD. They contracted University of Ghana lecturers to carry out a research in the area of the mixed regime, the excise tax mixed regime. And it was accepted by GRA, and currently it has been implemented. I also want to take this platform, this stage, to actually educate, people on the taxes that we collect. Let's take note of this, that taxes collected, okay, let's say total government revenue. Let's take note of the total government revenue for every year. About 75% of that are taxes. 75% of that are taxes.
I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to briefly, because Dr. Bishop has to run, I just want to thank him for his time. And if we could just get a small round of applause for Dr. Bishop as he leaves. Thank you so much, sir. We appreciate your time. So, okay, yes, sir.
So about 75%, let's take note of the statistics. Total government revenue, about 75% of that is tax revenue. Now let's take note of this as well. Now, total taxes collected, over 50% of that is used for compensation. My colleague is here. 50% of your taxes collected are used for compensation. Compensation goes to everybody. Anybody working with the government receives part of that. Now, the other 50% left, I want to give you this statistics. So we are talking about tax equity. Now, government has some programs as well as social interventions. Did you know that government from 2017 to 2021 spent about 5 billion on free SHS? So everybody is benefiting, is that not it? Yes.
I'm mildly skeptical because I know the story of this and where that money was supposedly coming from. And when I worked here, I used to live next to PIAC when it was in Kokomlemle.
Yeah, so I just want to give you some statistics.
No, of course, of course.
So we have a lot of social programs, okay, that the tax revenue actually go into.
Yes.
You see, so it was just to let my colleague know that taxes collected, sometimes the question is, what do you use the taxes for? But this statistics that I've given to you shows that government actually uses half of the taxes collected, even for compensation.
Maybe I can just, as I'll abuse my moderator privilege and say this, which is one, as you said, right, tax data is not often translated into local languages. People don't know where to look for this information. And, if I was a, cynical Ghanaian on the street and I saw 50% goes to compensation, I might say, why would I pay? It's going to their pockets only, right? So to say and that's where the role of the media and academia and other kinds of research and messaging can play a role.
Exactly.
But I do appreciate what it is that you're saying is that the information is there, and it's actually disaggregated to that extent.
Yes.
But the context is often missing.
Exactly.
And that's the issue,
Yes.
and that's a multi-stakeholder
Yes.
problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to conclude on that, so after government has used the taxes for compensation and most of these social programs, there's nothing left. So therefore, you don't see maybe your roads being constructed. You might feel, oh, why is government not doing all these things? But these are some of the challenges that the government actually face. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the compensation. He didn't mention of judgment debt. Judgment debt is part of it. Some of the debt goes huge into that judgment debt. But one of our challenges as a business community is that then we've been complaining about why the compliance level in the tax regime is low as a result of high tax rate. The tax rate of this country is extremely on the higher side. Just imagine cumulatively, you go to the port to just go and clear your goods, and you are paying 51% of your goods as a tax. For example, you import a goods worth about $100,000, you are paying about $51,000. So you see that compliance will be low. So always people are looking for ways and means. So that's why we've been complaining. Why won't you bring your tax rate down so that compliance will go up? Then those outside the net can come, because already they're looking at what is out there. I'm going to enter into 51%, then I better look for ways and means. So it's a challenge in this country. Now, VAT system, it's about 21%. Compared to all the sub-region, we are the highest. Recently, I went to a restaurant to go and eat, and I look at the tax component, get fund 15%, NHI 2.5%, COVID levy 1%, putting it all together about 40 cedis. Meanwhile, the food was 191 cedi. You see, so how many people will go and eat and pay that tax? Yes, so these are what we've been complaining about, is that our tax rate in the country, and anytime we meet the finance minister, they don't talk anything about that, and that is our challenge as a committee. Bring the tax rate down so that you have more people in the tax net. The business committee will help you to get more people into the tax net. So these are the areas that GRA should be looking at. The tax rate of the country is extremely high. It's no-go area. So that is why it's difficult for people to go into production.
That's Dr. Thompson's job. Yes, please.
Okay,
again,
quick one. So let me respond directly, right? I think it's not fair when we say minister doesn't really bring it up, but it's a strategy.
Maybe
Sorry. I can say that the minister is very much disturbed about this. And for us in the tax policy, I can tell you for a fact that he has a soft spot for the businesses. So just even, this is secret, but recently the minister has taxed the tax policy. Look at all these taxes at the port. The business guys are complaining. How do we reconcile? He has brought in the IMF, right, together, because we work together as part of the fund to see how they can make our the tax the structure really responsible. Because we are aware that the best tax policy is where rates are low. We broaden the tax base, everybody comply right now. But the nature of our economy is such that you are aware the high informal sector, right, is so challenging. We have a lot of projects to try to address what we call the SETREP, Self-Employed Income Tax Revenue Enhancement Project, where we've been engaging together with CSOs. We'll be engaging the market women in terms of their cooperative to see how we can really engender the issue of compliance, whilst we are also being a bit responsive, right? So we are looking at it. Just, Doc, in terms of the local consultants, now the ministry and my colleague just indicated, we are doing a lot. And there are areas, new areas, emerging global areas, which our people, I'm not trying to belittle our people, but we don't have the experts. We don't have the experts. It's not emerging from us. So what we do is that consciously, we try as much as possible to link the local consultants with the foreign consultant. Professor Bob King can attest to that, right? This is a deliberate thing that we are doing. Dr. Malik can attest to that. We have positioned him within the scope of IFS, UK, really to build capacity in certain areas which you don't have in the universities. And I can tell you for a fact, we are here. I also do a bit of PhD in tax, so I know what I'm talking about. It's a conscious effort to try and ensure that we build a local because they understand the system better, like Doc rightly said. So if you're able to get them up to speed, then you are sure that whatever outcome that they come, you can work with. And so I think we are responsive on that score. So I think let me know time for time. Let me just stop here. If anything will come on.
Actually, okay. Yeah, 30 seconds is okay. Now the tariff, the external tariff that we are using, the HS code that we are using, actually it is ECOWAS tariff, developed by the ECOWAS countries. And therefore, if you say Ghana has a lot, high taxes, taxes loaded at the ports. That is the issue. We are talking about ECOWAS coming together and coming out with a tariff. So there's no way Ghana government can decide to go, on a different tangent. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, yes, we'll come to that. I think this mic is not great.
Yeah. I just have a...
Like, let's get this other mic.
This one, okay.
Yes, okay. And we'll have one intervention from you. Alex, you can have the last word, and then we'll actually have, we have time for Q&A.
Sure. My question is directed to GRA and Ministry of Finance. I really want to understand what your challenge is, really, with achieving this whole equity when it comes to taxation, because we've heard you talk about the fact that you engage, and we've had countless number of engagements with the finance ministry and various sectors before the budget. Yet when the budget is read, nothing they proposed is in the budget. So what was the point in the stakeholder conversation? One. Number two, people like Alex Ampabing have been very vocal on issues like property tax as a way of raising revenue. Help us understand what your problem is, or challenge rather. Challenge.
With property tax, I can tell you what it is immediately. It's a constitution.
You see? Property rate.
Property rate, yes.
Oh, but you knew what I meant, Chairman. You knew what I meant. Okay. But then, property rate, fair point. So what I want to understand is, for you as government, what really is the challenge? Because we are tired of you going for the low-hanging fruit, and we are getting frustrated. Why can't you go to the other side? Help us understand, so we empathize.
So I'll let government respond, and then Alex, you will have the final word before we have some Q&A. Because I think now it's getting spicy, and now people want to ask questions.
You see, the equity that he talked about, I want to look at it from three perspectives. Perspectives. So one got to do with you are earning more, you are expected to pay more. The second one got to do with benefits of the taxes collected. The third one got to do with efficiency. So here, efficiency, we are saying that we make sure that everybody that is expected to pay tax is paying what? The tax. And that is what I rightly mentioned. Currently, your Ghana card is your TIN. What is it for? The main reason for that is to merge GRA data with National Identification Authority data. And here we are doing that to be able to identify potential taxpayers and bringing them on board. Efficiency, we have brought in a lot of things that are actually promoting efficiency. Now you don't have to even go to GRA office to pay tax. We are doing a lot in terms of that. Now, in terms of benefits, I just explained to you the taxes collected, what they are actually, the revenue is actually used for. I explained it. 50%, over 50% compensation, the rest for social programs. What is left is what you see as being used for other government projects. And some of the social programs that we have, you will not actually see the benefit of it, but the ordinary person who has been able to send his or her child to pre-sec knows that I'm benefiting from the tax revenue. So these are some of the programs that we are actually embarked on to ensure that there's equity.
So quick one. I think it was, like you talked about here, so I'm not going to the principles, the benefit principles, the vertical, horizontal, we are not going there. But if you talk about equity, like he indicated, yes, when we do some of these things, we are also mindful. I'm from the policy, his administration, whatever we tell them, they will do. But we don't bring these policies in a vacuum, as I said. But sometimes you are challenged. Okay, as you are saying, you may not see much engagement, but we do engage. Never think for 1 second that whatever input that we receive, it doesn't reflect in the budget. Yours may not reflect, but others also do. And whatever is not reflected, one thing is good. I can tell you now, for instance, we wanted to, the COVID levy, there has been much cry that COVID is no longer there, so we should take it off. I'm telling you that this came from one big CSO. It has not been reflected, but it's not something that we have thrown away, right? So we didn't see the COVID go off, but it's something that is being they have decided that from their proposal, we are supposed to change to a different fund, which is coming. So it's not as if we don't do it. That is what I want to say. We engage. No, it is not. We wanted to, by the act, it's supposed to terminate. We wanted to do, but we have a proposal from the same CSO saying that, please don't do that. No, that is what I'm saying. That is a proposal from you, the CSO. The second one has to do with.
No. Okay. Please let Dr. Thompson speak.
This is very important. The second one has to do with Dr. You see, we are coming from a system whereby we are saying that our tax to GDP is very low, right? We are now around average 13.3 if you look at it. We are even less than this. Within the same scope, the government recognizes that taxes, you see, we need a stakeholder input. So just recently, government did what we call a whole of government approach to our tax policy. We brought medium tax revenue strategy. You bear with us. Exactly. That input, that is what is going to really guide tax policy in future. So whatever policies that you see in the budget will be from these kind of policies, yes. But what I'm saying is that in doing that, even though in doing that, you may see other appendages. And I'm saying that we are seeing a tax GDP of 13. You are in a fund, which is saying that you are not taxing much, even though we know that you and I, we are overburdened and we need to expand it. Now 13, you are supposed, by that agreement, you are supposed to move towards tax to GDP of 20% in just 3 years, right? No economy, I'm telling you as a tax police person, I'm mindful that no economy can increase tax to GDP by more than 2%. But this is what you have to do. So you have to look at it both from administrative and policy. So it's not like you see there, we are challenged looking at it. So that's what I'm trying to explain so that you have an appreciation of it. Within a year, you are supposed to raise, do you know what it means? Right now, 2024, we are moving to what we call a GDP of about 1 trillion. Do you know what it means? So if you want to move from currently your tax revenue, what you are having, if you have to move to even 1%, do you know the additional revenue you have to raise? And that is why he's looking at. We are looking at third-party data matching, trying to bring those on board. Because if you have to do with this rate that we are going, the only option is just to raise those who are already in the kitty, which we already feel like they're overburdened, right? As I told you, Chief, there are a lot of taxes, which I'm saying the minister has charged us to do. He talked about the fact that we are in ECOWAS, but there is a room that we tell us we can tinker. That is what we are looking at, the 3%, looking at those strategic goods that you can help, also to support industry, so that we build local capacity. So these are things that are going on within the central government, which I think we are very passionate about. But lastly, with the tax to GDP, Dr. Pabi from academia, I'm putting that challenge with you. I said as a personal, let's say a student, I realize that if you look at, we compare like to like. Our sub-region, we said that we are below the what? Sub-Saharan average, about 18. We are now about 13. But let's look at what goes into calculation of tax to GDP. Have you really quizzed? You just take the narrative and you push it out there. So our tax GDP is low, we are not paying. So when it's out there and they pick the same numbers. And you're supposed to do. So in doing that within the same scope, then we will all be overburdened. By in doing that, the vulnerable, we will be asked. You see, what we do is that we try to see how we protect the poor. And that's why we bring the leap year. If you recognize, it's been doubled, right? But within the same kitty, he talked about compensation around 45%. What is killing us is interest payment, which doesn't come on the loans that we've already borrowed. Interest over 50%. Compensation around 45%. What is left? Keepers, 3%. Road, what can you do? Everybody wants a share of it. So we as federal government, we are really cornered. But we'll do our best to ensure that even as all these challenges are around us, we'll try and see how we bring the task, making it equitable for everybody. Thank you very much.
So Alex, you have the last word. Then because this has gone over, I will have time for 3 powerful questions. It cannot be a comment. If it starts being a comment, I will cut it off. Okay.
Okay.
So okay, so Alex, first, give your intervention. And then
I'm loving the interest here. You see, when we meet like this, it's not we versus them. And I think that's the something we all have to understand. That's not we, the civil society versus Ministry of Finance or the GRA. Because your work is for all of us. So I think we need to get that thing clear. One, I will be brutally honest with you, is that as a country, we are very lazy in terms of our taxes. And we've been using knee-jerk approaches, and I won't apologize for saying this. The reason is that what strategy guides our tax policies? We look at a situation when government is tight, and the government is running. firefighting to get revenue. That is not to say it's wrong. But what actually goes in, and if you go back to the luxury vehicle levy and the e-levy I was talking about, all this way because government was firefighting, that we need revenue, you have to rush and get it. But tax is not an emergency. It doesn't work like that. We've lived in countries where proper, I remember in 2010, when we have Sir Malik's reviewing the whole UK tax strategy. And if I tell you what went in and the period, it was almost a 2-year project that went in to see where UK that even has a system that we say is completely choked. They spent almost 2 years reviewing every single business opportunity. Kenya introduced a 3% on digital market players. And I was with the Revenue Authority boss in Lagos last year. Within 5 months, they had generated over 5 million. We were asking for the same thing in Ghana. Government rather went and put taxes on Facebook adverts. That, in a way, is rather overburdening Ghanaians. But the Facebook, the YouTube, and all those powerful, most of us here have, what's it called? Netflix account. How much is Ghana government getting from those? So we have moved away from that brick and mortar. And it's time that government spend, and the word here is spend. We need to see investment in tax infrastructure as important in, like any other fiscal infrastructure we undertake. But we are too lazy to spend on building the tax infrastructure. So we have no idea who is making what. But anytime you go online, you watch YouTube, Facebook, and you see a video, what that means is that Facebook and YouTube are making money right here in Ghana. And Ghana government, as it stands, get absolutely nothing out of it. These are some of the challenges we are talking about, that there is a potential to make money, but government has to be deliberate. And finally, I'll keep saying this and I won't stop it. We have a country that's hugely dominated by informal sector. But we believe that by adopting formal sector approaches, we will get there. Of course, I understand the challenges the ministry is going through because the addressing system doesn't seem to work. But you have, if I want to build now, and Dr. Albin talked about it earlier, I will need a mason, I will need a plumber, I will need a POP, I will need the carpenter, I need an electrician. What deliberate step is government taking to make sure that the builders, for example, will be held responsible for the cash they hand out to people who are working on their sites? How do we really adopt a system that works for us? Rather than thinking that an expert sitting in London, and not to discredit the expert you talked about, will know better than how the mason works here in Ghana. We will not get it right until we come to the context, understand the reality that we live in here. Until then, we will be chasing and be firefighting.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's just first a round of applause. Okay, now to deal with the issue of all the questions. So what I'm going to actually ask you, and also to give our panel a small break, write down your question on a piece of paper and send it up to me. I will actually only choose 3. However, if you write on your piece of paper who your question is addressed to, I will give them the question. So they have it, and you know their faces, you can follow up. And you have me as proof that I will also see the question, that at this forum you asked this question and you didn't receive a response or something. So please, if you have a question, please write it down. We'll give these folks 2-3 minutes. If you need to go drink water, what have you, everyone just take 2 minutes to write your question. And I'll pick 3. So, some vim. And yes, once you're done, make sure it gets passed up to me, please. Sorry. And yes, please make sure to write who this question is addressed to. Please, your questions, and I think there is a short intervention from the floor while the questions come in to GRA. Okay, MOF. Thank you. All right. Nee, can you please deliver, or take one of these mics and please deliver it? More questions, please. Because I'm also now going to read, if you have more questions, please get them to me. Chair's tax.
Your intervention.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
He said we can proceed.
All right. So, okay, let me see if I can actually summarize your questions so that we actually hit all of them. Okay. My panel, are you ready? So, this should be a quick one. The first question, which is to the GRA. And on this, I will invoke my God, inshallah. Is tax education or literacy effective in Ghana? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so
all right, if we could just get, thank you.
Actually, we are doing our best. Maybe the approach is what we'll have to change a bit, because we are more or less into using different methods of educating people. I just explained to everyone here the taxes we collect and how the taxes are actually utilized. But a lot of people don't know about this. And it is because of the approach. And I will even advise that the tax education...
Sorry, sir. Sorry, there's a lot of back chat, I think, coming from that corner. If we could just, I would really love, I know it's been a long day, festive period is knocking on our doors, but if I could just have your attention for like the next hour. Thank you, sir.
So I would say the tax education has not been very effective as we wanted. Of course, we have a tax education department and they are doing their best, but they are also constrained by budget and other things. So that is what I can say about that.
Brilliant. Thank you for that short and sweet answer. So there's another question, and this I could say is a GRA MOF double, So the question is, this 50% expenditure on compensation. And so the question here is really about if that is the case, right? How can that be, given that only a small portion of people work for the public sector? So, why is the government not considering reviewing that 50% expenditure and compensation? Given that a lot of employees are redundant. How is government ensuring that worker productivity matches with the compensation budget, right? So, for people, they're saying, like, if that's 50% from what we know of what the public sector is, that's a big mismatch. How is that being reviewed? How is that, is there policies around reviewing that? I don't know who amongst you might be better positioned to answer that question, but there's actually several questions on that line.
I think it's more with the Ministry of Finance.
Okay.
Yes, the truth is that there's this issue has been something that has been hanging on the neck of government. But yes, we are not yet at the 50%. Truthfully, if you look at Cote d'Ivoire is around near I think 34, something 24, 34, within that range. We are in the 40 range, right? Normally it's hovered around 40% now. In fact, the highest we went was around 45, right? But it's not yet. It's the bigger issue is, as I said, is the interest payment, which really we had no option but to restructure, right? And the issue is that with these two, it takes a chunk of the tax revenue, and we are just left less than 3% for capital, which really drives the growth, right? In terms of the real growth. Now, when you are talking about what government is doing, government really has recognized it, and it's a big concern, as I said. So what we are doing is that the single spine was really in response to these concerns, to try and see how we rationalize the pay in the public sector. But over the years, I think that objective has been defeated, right? Where we have still individuals, somebody, when the minister came, the Minister of Finance, who has the responsibility to ensure fiscal prudence, came and said that no, we have to rationalize the pay structure in the public sector. But because how come somebody say in the public sector, somebody take more than the president and all that, he wanted to rationalize it. So there are efforts ongoing to try and see how they rationalize it. But in doing that too, there are a lot of audits. And currently that's what government can do. There are a lot of payroll audits by the auditor service and all that, and which is yielding some fruit. But the issue that we currently even have is that we hear a lot of nurses and the teachers saying that there are a lot of attrition. They are going out. But we sitting in the ministry, we are not seeing that reflect in the compensation. It's still going up. So that is why I'm saying that there are a lot of efforts really to make sure that we clean the payroll. And so that is where the concentration is now. And once we do that, we also look at how we match these ones with productivity with compensation. That is something that is a huge project ongoing within the public sphere.
And let me just add this. So the question then goes back to the person. Is there anybody in the country that employs more than the government?
No.
You see, so we are talking about teachers across the length and breadth of the country. We are talking about nurses across the length and breadth of the country. We are talking about the security institution agencies across the length and breadth of the country. We are talking about the ministries. We are talking about the departments. They are all employed by the government, and government will have to pay them. Now the concern is, how come that we still have unemployment? Government is doing its best. Occasionally you see recruitment into the army, recruitment into the police, recruitment into the fire service, recruitment, into the Ghana Education Service. They are all increasing the payroll of the government. But as my colleague rightly mentioned, we only have to use technology to ensure that monies paid to these people do not go to ghost people. So that is the way we can actually curtail.
So quick one before you even come in, just to also add to what my colleague said. We, as a policy, because he's with the Ghana Revenue Authority, they collect it, so it's kind of a bit sticky when some of these things are. But I'm saying a policy. Government, we recognize government, even though currently is the larger employer, government recognizes that it's the private sector that should be the engine of. They should drive this and they should employ.
Yeah.
In fact, ideally, government is the key one, the provision, the security and all the next, the essential workers. Is the private sector who is supposed to employ. And that is why, as a bigger policy, government wants to create the enabling environment so that the private sector really can be productive, they can be profitable and employ. So the idea is not for government to balloon its, payroll. The idea is to ensure that we are able to make the productive sector more effective. That's why in the current administration, they said that we are moving the policy trust, move from what? Taxation to production. So at least the private sector can be vibrant to employ and reduce the unemployment, the high unemployment that we have in the system. Yeah,
Okay, thank you. And maybe here again, I will abuse my facilitator privilege and put on my hat also as someone who has, I refrain from saying expertise, but that is what it is. In terms of, as you're absolutely right, in most countries, the government is always the largest single employer. I think this, but I do also know there's this issue of attrition, ghost names, and so, as you said, the government is taking it seriously, but as and it's something that actually everyone has kind of said in this room, interagency cooperation needs to improve, data sharing between agencies and government needs to improve to really combat some of these issues, which again is not just a Ministry of Finance problem, and this thing of saying whole of government, and how can that happen? And again, this is where we say, how can other stakeholders help with this issue, right? And I really urge government to see us as collaborators in that sense, whether it's industry or CSOs or media or academia, how can we help with things that are, problems of that nature? I think this issue of, there's some questions here around allocation of expenditure. I would say expenditure is often not talked about tax because it's actually a different sector. For example, me working in tax, I never really cared about budget. In fact, I had to learn to work at International Budget Partnership. So I'll say to those who asked about allocations, I'm sorry, this is not the forum, but to give you some idea of why allocations, and you're asking these questions, is as has been articulated, the amount of budget that it can be allocated to programs, whether it's health or education, actually is very small as a percentage, right? And that's why if you have a debt issue, we always say that's a revenue problem. That means you don't have enough money to fund your programs. And as people have said, the social programs in Ghana are quite large. So how do you fund them? And that's why we've been talking about revenue, these additional monies, et cetera, et cetera. So on that, I'm sorry, my fellow panelists, all the questions are for the government. I think because they've caught you. They've caught you. So for the Ministry of Finance, so this question of collating position papers, policy recommendations from various CSOs, industry associations, the process of making these inputs to the national budget, how do you do it? Is there a call? Is there a place? There's a question around how that process actually happens. So please.
Quick one, I'll say the PFM is a requirement on us. Now before the budget, as part of the budget process, really we collect input from the stakeholders, including the various segments that you've mentioned, the CSOs, the academia, and all that. So I'm saying for the ministry, we are very particular about it. So around, I'm not so much really spot on the calendar, but somewhere around March or so, even before, you can just submit to the, what do you call it, the PR unit.
The PR unit?
Yes, the public relation unit. You submit.
Please,
it has to even be to the
mic.
tax. Yeah. It is tax, and you feel like you know somebody directly, you can come straight to us, revenue policy, and give those, what do you call it, input to us. And you can be rest assured that it will be extensively discussed. And we won't discuss it in vacuum, but we discuss in partnership with you. So that's what is happening. But you can send all the inputs to the PR, but specific units can also receive such inputs. And it will come to the sphere, the discussion.
Maybe I'll ask you the question that lies underneath this. Yeah. Where is this information available that you can send these things to, the PR arena, and where can we find that information? Where is it publicized?
Okay. Normally, even before, we always publish it. It comes to the dailies, right? It comes to the dailies, and I'm saying that it's a requirement on our part under the Public Financial Management Act, right? That we engage before, as part of the budget process, we engage. And through what we do is that there's an advert. Every time we do, the PR unit, which I'm aware, they, advertise, okay, call for stakeholder inputs into the budget. And I'm saying we are, over the years, this thing has been institutionalized. So for us, tax policy, we always have PwC, the tax practitioner, the academia, Professor Ali Nachia, we used to be working with Dr. Ali Nachia. They all bring inputs, even before. So these are the institutional bit. But apart from that, the open bit, as part of the requirement on our part, we advertise. and it's open. I think on the Ministry of Finance website, if you go the MOFEB, www.mofeb.gov.gh, you will see all these what information there. But it's part of the PFM requirement on our part. Yeah.
Great, brilliant.
Can I just say this?
Yes.
So there is no budget that is read in Parliament that, stakeholders were not engaged. After the budget is prepared, there's always engagement. There's always engagement with relevant stakeholders for their inputs before the budget is finally read in Parliament. So there's that opportunity for everybody to come and share, their ideas, their inputs with the Ministry of Finance before the budget is read. So it is there. Yes.
Just something quick to it, and that's they are both right. The challenge we had was that sometimes you get the call a day, and then you are asked to bring your input. So one of the things that we have adopted, that's why we have the CSO Budget Forum. One thing we have adopted is that we make sure our inputs are ready. So we become more like the army. So as soon as we get the call, the next day we're ready. But it was a big challenge some time ago when you get called. One time, I think in 2018, I was there one morning around 9, and then we got a call, and myself and Karim had to meet the minister at 11:30. And that's what I was saying, even in my house, if I have to prepare my banku and tilapia, I need more than an hour to prepare to do my budget. How much more national budget? But since we decided to go our own way by forming the CSO Budget Forum, and I also use that to urge anyone here who is not be part of the CSO Budget Forum, because when we speak as one, the ministry and the minister takes us seriously. Then when we go, we have Send Ghana presenting 10 minutes, except 5 minutes, Act Africa. It doesn't help. So let's all come together, submit input like we did for the IMF. And then we have a CSO voice for maybe 2024 budget. When you submit to them one, it makes it easier for them to review a CSO positions. And sometimes we meet and different CSOs, we disagree or agree. So you have our own little debate, and we think this is the right way to go. So when you submit as a CSO input, I think it's better. If you are not part, remember we are not competitors. We are all working to achieve the same thing. So let's come together, join the CSO Budget Forum, submit our input annually. So then the ministry will now start dealing with us as a CSO Budget Forum, as one. And I think then we have a solid mouthpiece in getting this out. But they have been engaging. On that one, I'll give them 100%.
All right. I need to close the panel. So I'm now going to ask you, again, your 30-second last statement. And maybe we'll go from here to here, just to, because I'm keeping an eye on the time. Yes.
So the other question is, GDP is great exponential due to the digital economy. How ready are we to tax this economy? Yes. So like Dr. Mbabi said, you need to understand the context, right? GDP is growing, but which sector is contributing to the growth? Is that low level, like this comments? They open this tabletop, and you see that, and these are all contribute to it. And most of them, they agri sector, which is purely untaxed. So it becomes a challenge that even though the GDP is growing, you are not able to tax effectively and all that. So all these ones are put in context.
Yeah, you don't need to answer those. I'm asking you just for your final statement. Okay. This one, if you who wrote the question, so you know how to bother these people later. So, but just your final statement.
The final statement, I think it's such engagements to us is quite productive, right? So we tax and equity. As I'm saying, the minister is quite really sympathetic towards the kind of tax policy that we bring, how we really protect the vulnerable. So for us, any input will be welcome. And that recognition has led the research unit to establish what we call the micro-simulation model, to see that whatever tax policies that we bring out, we try to simulate its impact, the incidence on the individual, to see how we really protect the vulnerable, right? Every year, in terms of the income tax, you will see that anytime the minimum tax go, we adjust to ensure that we are able to protect the vulnerable. These are all part of the progressive system that we're trying to chant. But we also recognize, as I'm saying, we recognize the fact that, yes, most of the policies that come out are really not equitable, and rather they becomes a bit regressive. And in trying to do, we look at policies that we will put in place to really support it. So we recognize the challenge, and we also recognize the positives. So let's all engage and see how we'll move the country Ghana forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so a quick one. So GRA is actually very much concerned about tax equity. And because of this, we have put in place a lot of measures to ensure this. I mentioned 3 areas in terms of how much you should pay based on your income. We have actually come up with thresholds. And in the first time in the history, tax administration of Ghana, we have even introduced a 6th band, which is 35%, just to make sure that the tax is very, very progressive. 2, we are talking about efficiency, and GRA has put in place a lot of measures to ensure that, there's efficiency in terms of tax administration. Those who are supposed to pay taxes are actually paying. And then based on this, we have even established the high net worth individual office, just to ensure that there's tax equity. And lastly, in terms of the benefits, in fact, I've actually explained this, that tax revenue actually is used to the benefit of everybody. Thank you very much.
I don't have much to say than to say thank you to everyone for coming. And hopefully this relationship will not end here.
Right. Thank you very much. Yes, we want to help government to mobilize revenue. But I think one of the things we need to do is to see how best we can come up with some tax reforms. I think Madam spoke earlier on some tax reforms project that you did, but we still need some more tax reforms. Yes, because in recent time, GRA introduced some policy by going to sit in people's shop in the name of tax invigilation, And but what happened to those businesses that they were collapsing because now the consumers were not patronizing their product. You see, because they see the taxman sitting in their shop, and the next shop is not registered, so he will move to the. And we have consumer education. We're also talking about that. There's a role that the consumer should play. A consumer will come to your shop and say, "I don't want a VAT invoice," and you won't let the consumer go. So what you do is that you sell for the person. When he leaves, then you write the invoice, and then you tear it out and keep it, and then go and pay the needed. So we need, it's both sides. Consumer, the public must know that it's their responsibility to go for VAT receipt and pay a little. So we need more tax reforms and tax education. Yes, very.
All right, thank you very much. I would say that on behalf of the media, we are ever open and ready to engage with whoever wants to drive strategic conversations with us. We believe that you should see us also as strategic partners rather than just bottom liners. And then also, I would urge the government agencies here, one of the challenges we have in dealing with your outfit is that you are rarely open to speak to us when we need information to drive the conversation, even in your advantage. So we hope that moving forward, you would make your human resource available to help steer the conversation. And I will end finally by saying that effective communication isn't cheap. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you to our excellent panel. Thank you to everyone for your attention. Please, big round of applause. Oh, I can see everyone from here. I can see who's not clapping. Thank you. All right, thank you to our panel. We are drawing to the close of our day. And so if you will allow me, one last exercise. So I hope the Post-its and markers are still on the tables. I had arranged them very nicely for you in the basket. So the one last thing, as we close out the day, we've had some rich discussion. We have some rich outputs over there. The last thing is, okay, everyone here represents a specific kind of stakeholder. So you'll see on this wall, government, professional bodies and unions, industry, academia, CSOs, and media. So each one of these is represented here in this room today. And on the Post-its, using the markers, I want you, so first of all, on the top, write what kind of stakeholder you are. So for me, all my Post-its at the top would say CSO, right? Because I work for a civic organization. If you're media, please write media on the top. And you don't need to necessarily cover all the stakeholders, But I want you to take some time on your own or even maybe chat with your neighbor. But I would like each person, if possible, to produce something, which is just to write, what do you want from each of these stakeholders? Say, if I'm a CSO, what would I like to see from government? What would I like to see from professional bodies or unions, or industry, or academia, or other CSOs and media, right? You don't have to hit all of them, but ideally, if you can choose maybe the 3 most important to you, again, you would write, like I'm the CSO, so I'd write CSO on top, underline, and then I'd write, okay, from government, I'd like to see this and this and this. And then I'll put it on the government flip chart. Pardon? Yeah, exactly. It's just more, clarifying never hurts. And so if you want to let's take, we don't have that much time, let's take 10 minutes, less than that, let's take 7 minutes. There should be Post-its on the baskets and stuff like that. If you don't have some, let me know. No, there should be enough. I measured it well. So again, and feel free to discuss with your neighbors. So again, make sure to label your Post-its with the kind of stakeholder you are. So if you're a media person, the top of all your Post-its should say media. And then please write what you would like to see from these other stakeholders, including other media if you're a media person. If you're government, you can even say, I would like other government institutions to do the XYZ. So feel free. So let's take 7 minutes. I don't know why we're so quiet. Everyone had lots of demands when the panelists were up here. So feel free to channel those demands. And this is, I'm also saying, I know government got a lot of those demands, but government, feel free to demand from us. Please air your grievances, make your wishes for Christmas from all the other stakeholders. Again, please label your Post-it with what kind of stakeholder you are. Thank you, sir. Exactly, make a wish. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. If you have to dream, dream big. But I think it's also at least if we can set an intention, we can see, you never know, right? We put these here, and within a year, 2 years, maybe we are reaching the place where we're able to actually meet each other's demands and work in collaboration. Yeah, where are the people taking photographs? Why no cute shots of people? No, you've taken them, but where are the professional photos?
You think I'm not professional? I'm so handsome.
Semi-professional. I can see that CSOs are making demands of other CSOs a lot. No one making demands of academia. Okay, media's getting at government, I knew. Industry. Again, please label what kind of stakeholder you are, because I want to say, at the end of this, we'll be able to say, okay, media, government needs this and this from you. Industry needs this and this from you. If you label it, then we can at least group the demands. And at the end of this helps our reporting. And if you're done, I would ask you to help tidy up the baskets. So if there's stray Post-it notes and markers, if you could just, again, put them back into the baskets if you're done. Otherwise, I'll have to clean it up later, so please help me. Wow, people are really not making demands of industry or unions and professional bodies. I would say, meanwhile, those two are the most organized when it comes to approaching government. I'm seeing some unlabeled ones, so I don't know. Let me check. Okay, I see CSO at the top. Okay, there we go. I'm making sure you can see. Because I have to write the report, right? So it's like, I want to make my own life easy. Please, one more minute. So if you don't have your Post-its up, please start getting them up there. Yes, please start putting your Post-its because we'll start to close. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so please feel free to, here, yeah. Use any of these markers. This might be the best one, actually. This writes well. Mm-hmm. All right, for those of you who have put in their Post-its, if you could just help me by putting back the extra Post-its and markers into a basket near you, I would really appreciate the help, because otherwise I will be doing that. Thank you. Can I grab this? Yeah, okay. I'll just put it. Do you need another one? Or Are you okay? Okay. Okay. All right. So I think the last few Post-its are making their way to the wall. So if you've put your Post-its, I ask everyone just to, this one is mine. Oh, okay. No, I've opened it. I've opened it. Oh, thank you. All right, if I can ask people once they've had their Post-its, oh, thank you, sir. Open, okay, I think everyone is done. So again, if you can help me by putting kind of stray markers and Post-it notes back into the baskets, it will make my life quite easy. I appreciate that. All right, okay. If I can have people seated for the last 10 minutes of this, I promised you 2:30 out, I am going to deliver it to you. If people can take their seats, please. If people can take their seats. Okay. Yes, if people can take their seats, I would appreciate it. All right. Thank you. Seats, please. Last few stragglers. Okay, which one of these was the good microphone? One of these ones, I think. Is this a good microphone? Yes. Okay. So thank you for bearing with what has been. I promised everyone you would work, and you have. I absolutely love seeing this. Again, at the end of the program, if you want to take pictures, feel free. It is for you. It'll be part of our reporting. So when we send the summary of the event, we'll have pictures of these as well. But for your own purposes, if you'd like, again, please take photos. I just want to now, it's been a long day. Again, it's what is it today, 21st? Oh my gosh. Christmas is basically this weekend. Thank you for being with us, so close to the festive period. So I just want to get maybe 3 volunteers, so one from this side, one from this side, and one from this side. Just to say, from your side, what are the 3 key takeaways you're taking away from this event and, hopefully into the new year? So who would like to volunteer? Yes, sir. And if you could just say your name and who you are before you give us your 3 key takeaways.
My name is Benedict Do. 3 key things that stood out for me is clearly, as a nation, we need to work on a national tax strategy. That is something we must all be ready to contribute to, or the ministry must take that initiative. We know the medium-term strategy has been worked on, but in terms of long-term national tax strategy, we need to do something about it. And the question I kept asking myself when we were going through the process was, how do we ensure, what targets are we setting for ourselves, even as civil society organizations? If we're talking about the fact that the tax system of Ghana is regressive, where do we seek to push it to in the next 10 years so that that can inform our advocacy and other strategies over this period? We should also have some targets for ourselves as a group, which we'll be working towards in the next 5-10 years. So if we are demanding for a long-term strategy from state actors, we ourselves also would have to put something in place. The second I want to mention is that it is true that government spends quite a high percentage of tax revenues on compensation and debt servicing. But for me, that is even very regressive in itself. It's not equitable. Why? Because how many people work in the public sector? Why will you collect money from all of us, talking about 30-something million people, and use that to compensate about 600 or something, 500 people? Is that equitable? We must rethink that whole analysis and see, if you talk about public service delivery in Ghana, it's not the best. It is true we have free SHS, but we still have schools under trees. We still have children under very regrettable conditions, especially at the second cycle level. And we hear all those things around. Health care is not the best. So if we're talking about efficient utilization of tax revenues, if we argue along the lines of compensation and debt servicing, for me, I disagree with that totally. Something that for me, as a takeaway, we should look at, so that government can, like the payroll audit he spoke about, good, we should do all those things to reduce the burden on government, so that tax policies that are churned out are not crafted only for revenue purposes, but they must also consider how they can promote private sector growth. So that private sector will generate the jobs that will bring government the needed revenue. If you employ all these people in the public sector, how much are they even paid in the public sector? Some 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 there, and the tax elements are small. And so they end up still billing the private sector people, which is then used to pay these people again. I don't think that is equitable. I don't think that is fair. The final thing I want to talk about is the fact that we know GDP is growing, and this is mainly being driven by service sector and especially also the digital economy. But as a country where we stand now, I don't think we are well prepared to fully tax, especially the digital economy. And we'll be very happy to hear from the ministry. We know some things are being done, but they should speed up efforts so we could get a good percentage of our tax revenues also from that sector. These are my 3 takeaways and then my request of my big men. Thank you.
I mean, you were seated in the right position for that, I should say. I mean, I think you might have underestimated how many people work in the public sector. But yes, maybe from volunteer from this side or this side. Oh, from the corners. Oh. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
here.
for the opportunity. My name is Daniel Limo. One thing I'm taking home is the media assuring us that they want to be active participant in engagement and not just reporting. And most of you agree when you invite media, the moment the initial this thing are going on, they are looking for speeches and go and publish and they go. But for me, most activities are going to say you are a participant. So you wait until the end of this so that you can get everything and report on. So media should be active participant and also try to avoid being partisan, because your work will be more appreciated if you don't, you are not.
Sorry, there's some cross chat from this end of the room that I would just like to calm down because it's important that we all listen to each other.
Yeah.
Yes, so please go ahead.
So that is one major thing that I want to see, as they promise, I want to see them being active participants and not rushing to go to the studio and editor is waiting to go and publish a news item. Secondly, too, is not fully a takeaway, but the education. GRA and the FINA, they say they are doing tax education. I go through a lot of this community throughout the country. I have never come across anywhere, maybe in the market, where people come a lot to do this thing that I can see a van or somebody from GRA doing tax education. So if you are not, they say they are doing tax education, where are they doing it? Is it for the elite? Then they have to revise their notes. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And so, all right, because this was technically corner, and then I just want to see who will volunteer from this side. Okay. No, but I want to secure the volunteer on this side before okay. So then we can pass it this way. Can you please help? Thank you. So 3 key takeaways. I don't think that's on. Just can someone check, please? Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. GRA has gone a step further in tax education by extending tax education to tertiary institutions, which has not been in the system since inception of the revenue organization. So gradually, you know, there's the saying that you catch them young. You know, if you are able to make them get a vibe, make sure that they get understanding of the importance of taxation right from that stage, it's going to help a long time. I mean, when they grow up, when it comes to evasion and avoidance, it will be limited. And when they are educated, it is also expected that they also take it up to the villages. You know, when they go to the villages, they don't wait for only GRA. You know, they'll go to the villages and see grandma, grandpa, you know, talk to them, oh, this and that and that and that. And little by little, I mean, it spreads. So with time, it's going to go down to the basic educations as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So Alex, could you just pass me the mic? Again, it's 3 takeaways, because that side is more populated than this side. So I'm going to come over here to the gentleman in the very nice shirt. So for your 3 key takeaways, please.
Thank you very much. One very key one is the fact that as civil societies, we need to work collectively and have one position, which is very good. And so I will drum that when I engage my actors. And the second one is the fact that I have seen a facilitator that is so inspiring, making everybody work. And indeed, we have work. A round of applause for the facilitator.
Thank you. Thank you. You spoil me. No, just a note on that before I hand over for closing remarks. I always appreciate that, look, if you've been invited to this event, it's because we appreciate your voice, your role, your perspective. But when you just have presentations and panel discussions, you don't actually get to hear all the perspectives and voices that are in the room. That, you know, we have handpicked you, quite literally, and then we don't get to hear you. And so this way of facilitation means that everyone's voice is represented. See, I made sure I asked you individually, please make sure you have something. And so that, you know, at the very least, from when we do the report, we will be able to say, these were the perspectives in the room, these were the concerns, these were actually the places where we saw some commonalities, you know, because I'm really excited to then go back and read this to see what are the common demands maybe from different people. And when you get the project report, you will be able to see those things reflected. And that's very important to not only me as a facilitator, but this is actually the IBP methodology. Staff at IBP are trained. Alex, he didn't even sign the contract. We flew him to Abuja to train him on this methodology. So it is also part of our organizational values. So I hope that if you come to more of our IBP events, you'll benefit from this form of facilitation. And I must say thank you for being engaged and participatory and switched on. I know it's so hard at like literally this date at this time. And so it's been a pleasure being your moderator, your facilitator today. And with that, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Jeffrey of RMA to deliver closing remarks. Thank you.
Nice one. I think we should give Madam another round of applause. It's been action, action, action all through. And I think we also deserve some clap, a very wonderful one, for all participants. It's been wonderful. If you look on the walls, clearly, one can just stand there and you can produce a very good report of what we expect to be done, so we ensure that there is equity in our taxation system. I have no much to say. I am just thrilled by the participation, and RMA, IBP, and all partners here. A good job done. I think the outputs will be put together in a report, and then we'll share with you. What the joy is that the representation is so clear. Government, CSOs, academia, I mean all stakeholders, the major stakeholders. We need to agree. And sometimes, like one person said, we can disagree. But even when we disagree, at the end of the day, it's only proper. But for the CSOs, the take home is that I'm sure we've made inroads. And from what Dr. Combat said, they take from us. From what the Ministry of Finance has said, they also take from us. My friend, Mr. Ogbodu from the media, we have heard you. We'll do a lot more on our collaboration. I even think we're doing good. And I think the financial aspects will be looked at. So all CSOs will take care of the media. That said, I'll say a big thank you to all of you. On the Ghana local side, I'll go to the tree side and say, Yedamwase. The Dangbes will say, Nyechumka. And the Elves will say, Akpena Mikata. Which one is left? I mean, a hundred year bedding. Merci beaucoup. Hey, well, Pope John, okay, once you are from Pope John, you said it on our behalf. Yes. I would have said same anyway. Yes, so thank you all for coming. And I know, like Madam said, look, around this period, it's very difficult to get people. People are rushing to their reports. Others, I know others also had engagements and, they had to sacrifice to come for this one. We are so grateful. And then on behalf of our sponsors and partners who are in the person grip of International Budget Partnership and on our humble behalf, the RMA, we cannot continue thanking you just for short. I mean, we continue till you get home and still receive the reports I will share with you. You still have time to make inputs if you have anything to share with us. Please make the inputs. You know where the areas cover, and if you have some inputs, please add on to the email addresses. We all have your email addresses. We'll just flash the information to you. So thank you all for coming. The lady in red will take care of our panelists, and then my dear lady in the black suit over here, can you please give us a wave so they see you? Wonderful. You also, the participants will see here for their transportation. We have a little envelope work for you. So on that note, we say thank you to all of you. May the good Lord bless you, and a Merry Christmas in advance. Enjoy the Yuletide, but remember that the tax issues are still on the table for discussion. Thank you. Yeah, so lunch will be down, and so we decided that we'll go down after we take our envelopes, and then we'll go and have lunch. The discussion must continue from there. Group picture. Where did it? You forgot. Okay, you want another one because I thought we took one.